The first NFL Best Ball Mailbag was so nice, we had to do it twice. Myself, Erik Beimfohr, and Pat Kerrane rounding out our very first, actually, NFL Best Ball Mailbag here on Legendary Sickos. Go take a listen back to part 1 on both the Legendary Upside and Spike Week YouTube channels and podcast feeds. And today we're going to get into all or most of the questions that we missed from you guys last week, covering all things best ball here on Spike Week and Legendary Upside.
3, 2, 1, liftoff.
All right, Pat, part 2, Best Ball Mailbag. I actually had a ton of fun with the mailbag. I also particularly enjoy hearing from the folks and the things that are interesting to them. You and I could ramble on for hours, and we do ramble on for hours. And we will maybe today about, the things that we find interesting or some relevant topics of a certain time. But it's fun to hear like some different questions from all of the folks. And it also helps me like think through some things a little bit differently with some different framing. So we got 7 to 10 questions. We'll see how many of those that we can get to before I dive into those. Of course, if you have not watched this show or listened to this on your podcast feed, welcome. Thank you. Where have you been? Well, probably not listening to 4-hour podcasts is where you have been. But if you're playing best ball, there's 2 things that I believe that you should sign up for. 1, Legendary Upside over on Pat's side, where it's some of the best just fantasy football content, but of course, tons of best ball content that you can get with some tools and free perks. We won't get into all of that different stuff. Free money on Underdog. But if you are a Legendary Upside subscriber, you can get access to 40% off of a Spike Week purchase. That applies to our premium best ball tools, such as the Draft Hacker overlays that are killer. You can use in your drafts to see your exposures and correlations and playoff matchups and everything there in between. There's like 100 different options. Now you can set up to see what you want to see during the drafts, and our Draft IQ tool, which allows you to analyze your best ball portfolio across all of Underdog, DraftKings, and Drafters to make sure you're actually doing what you think you want to be doing in drafts, which is a lot harder than you think, by the way. But you can get 40% off of that, as well as our Best Ball Almanac. If you subscribe to Legendary Upside, use promo code LEGUP when you purchase. Anything else that you got before? I got the first question that I'm going to pull up here that is particularly relevant to this time of year and the next, couple of months. But anything else before we dive in?
Yeah, still do have some of the $50 Underdog credits, legendaryupside.com/perks if you want to check out how to get that with a yearly subscription.
I also forgot to mention there's so much free shit going on around here that if you sign up for Spike Week, which comes with, if you use the 40% off leg up code, you also get a free ticket into the Drafters NFL Best Ball Championship. Shout out to our good folks at Drafters. Nice. And of course the good folks at Underdog from Pat's side, but you can get a bunch of free contests as well. So you get discounts and free money to use on these sites if you sign up for both Legendary Upside and Spike Week. Let's get into this first question from I never know. I'm calling you Drake. I'm not sure his username if I'm handling it appropriately. So please correct me in the Discord if I quoted your name wrong. You guys all use some creative names. It's not just Erik Beimfohr on your damn Discord. So if I'm disrespecting you, I apologize.
I never thought like it would become like a boomer thing to just like use my name.
I know.
Just like my name.
Like I just turned 36 and I continue to feel more boomerish every single day, especially running a Discord community. But he says, my question would be regarding how do you guys sift through all of the training camp news, and what news do you feel comfortable fading, or what feels, important to react to? I love this question.
Great question.
And I feel like this is something that we're going to be discussing, us on future shows and any content that you listen to, Twitter, Discord, figuring out what to do with all the news, because I will just preface by saying, even I feel a little overwhelmed sometimes with how much access we now have to these NFL teams. Even when best ball started, it was not right. We're getting OTAs, highlight clips and reports of 7-on-7 sessions and everything from there. So how do you think about all this news and, what to react to, what to fade, et cetera?
Yeah, I think you want to have some baseline expectations set up in your head of kind of like what, there's going to be puff pieces, there's going to be hype, there's going to be BS in the mix here. That's just a given. It's a guarantee. But there is going to be some real actionable stuff that comes out as well. I guess one thing, okay, so let's kind of zoom out and like how is this information coming to us? It's coming to us largely through beat reporters. Beat reporters are not scouts. They're not there to evaluate the talent level of these players. Sometimes we'll hear like, oh, so-and-so looked really good. That's like kind of the least valuable information. So-and-so looked really good today. Like Tyquan Thornton looked really good today in practice. That's not really of interest to me. Now, if Tyquan Thornton is stringing together a lot, like day after day of looking great, and it's coming with, it seems like Tyron, at this point, Thornton looks like a lock to make the roster. That is of interest to me. It's like, but it's not like I'm not looking for, to my eye, this is the best route runner on the Pats. Like I could kind of care less about that. What I am looking for is depth chart information. And I want, so if you go, like, let's say you go to the Athletic and you're looking at the posts, and shout out to the Legendary Upside Discord, we have a feed that pulls in all of the Athletic posts from every team. So you can go through and just click in. If it's like, there was one on Brock Bowers, right? And it's like Brock Bowers kind of came a long way from his start at blah, blah, blah high school, and he worked his way, I think, up to Georgia. Is this profile on Bowers? If it's, I don't read that. I know who Brock Bowers is. I know his whole deal. I already did this. This is stuff I've done. I don't need the puff piece on Brock Bowers that explains to Raiders fans who Brock Bowers is. That's not really that interesting to me. What's more interesting to me is like the pieces that are like day 3 of OTAs, defense had strong day and other notes. I love those. Go down, like just scroll through, skim them. You're not gonna read all, and you go and you're like, there's like on the bottom, it's like today with the one, like in the Dallas Cowboys one, they're like, we got to see the running backs break out by team today, and it was Zeke, Dowdle, and their fullback, and then everyone else. That was with the first team, and everyone else with the second team. So I was like, okay, that's on track. That sort of like what I would expect. It's Zeke and Dowdle. There's no, Deuce Vaughn mixing with the ones or whatever. Like that kind of information. I'm kind of just checking that sort of stuff to make sure like my understanding of depth charts, like Braylon Allen looks like there's stuff where they're like, he looks like he's probably the number 2 right now. Is he not in favor? And as of right now, Braylon Allen looks like the lead for the number 2. It doesn't mean I'm smashing Braylon Allen, but I did move him up slightly in the ranks because he looks like he's starting to look a little bit more like the number 2. There was a bunch of talk about what a good pass catcher he looks like. I'm throwing that. I don't care about that part.
Yeah, that was crazy, by the way. That was I can't believe that's being floated. Like I watched him in Wisconsin. You're not fooling me.
That's not what I'm moving him up for. But I do think it matters that he looks like he's in the current lead to be the number 2. So to me, it's like the most important stuff is the depth chart stuff. I do think some of the coach speak can be helpful, especially if it's sort of like it's because, okay, so they ask coaches, Shane Steichen was asked about Jelani Woods. And like, what do you think of Jelani Woods? Like, he's like, his answer boiled down to like, yup, he's here, but he wasn't here last year and he's here now. And he's like, he's got to say nice stuff. He's like, oh yeah, he's big. He runs this route. He runs that route. But it's like, it's very clear that he had to answer about Jelani Woods. He's not gonna be like, oh, Jelani Woods, never heard of him. Like he's going to say some stuff to me. I'm like, I could care. That doesn't, but the Dan Campbell stuff, he keeps talking about Jameson Williams, and he's talking about him like a lot. And he doesn't usually talk that nice about Jameson Williams. And there was even in the Athletic article, they were like, pay attention when coaches are talking about guys who they don't normally talk about. That's another thing, by the way. Sorry, I'm like going on, but that's another thing.
This is the point.
Yeah,
what we want to hear.
There are also some limits on what the beat writers are even allowed to tell us.
Yeah.
And sometimes the beats will try to communicate information that maybe it goes a little beyond what they're supposed to do. The example that this was like, my Charlie, board and string thing from last summer, but it was
Pepe Sylvia.
I went full Pepe Sylvia. with Jordan Rodriguez was showing us. She put out a picture that was Cam Akers, Kyron Williams, and then Darrell Henderson, whoever the third back was, Ronnie Rivers or whatever.
Yep.
And she said she posted a picture of them in that order and said sometimes the order that the running backs go through the drills doesn't mean anything, and sometimes it does. And that was her literally telling us the depth chart, because she's not allowed to do that. Now, I don't know. Maybe I don't want to get Jordan in trouble here. Maybe I'm still misinterpreting. Maybe I'm still going Pepe Sylvia. But that, for forever, I'm like, Jordan found a way to tell us the exact depth chart. And thank you so much for doing that. And I got a little bit of hint of that with the pay attention when coaches are talking about people that don't talk. They're trying to say, like, I think this is like this matters. This isn't just typical coach speak of, hey, what do you think of Jameson? He's like, yeah, he's doing fine. So I think if you get a sense from the beat writer that they're actually like trying to underline something, I would, especially if it's depth chart related, I would pay attention to that. Some of the depth chart stuff doesn't matter that much. Drake May's working with the threes. What does that mean? That the Patriots are still hardos even though Belichick's not there. That's what that means. I don't care.
You mean the inside linebacker who played for Belichick as the head coach? And
he's a total hardo.
Being a hardo? Yeah. What a shanda. Yeah.
We're shocked. Like, that doesn't matter. Some of the stuff, like some of the rookies are going to have to work their way in a little bit slower. It's not, so that stuff takes a little bit more parsing. I will shout out Coach Speak Index, who I think does a really, really good job. Amazing. Of parsing a lot of this stuff and sharing clips that are generally like really helpful, not just like kind of the pure coach speak stuff, like kind of highlighting some of the gems of the things that we actually do want to see that might move the needle one way or another. So he had some good stuff on the Cowboys backfield that I'm just starting to feel like these guys are not freaking out at all. Yeah, they don't seem worried about Zeke plus Dowdle, which to me feels pretty bullish about Rico Dowdle. Zeke will get his, but
the Cowboys don't feel worried about anything. And I just run down the offensive depth chart, and I'm like, like we do the "aren't you worried" thing in best ball all the time about things I'm worried far less about than the Cowboys' skill talent. Is like, Brandon Cooks was pretty bad last year. Like Jake Ferguson, it seems good, but like this ain't Travis Kelce. And then there's to your point about like puff piece. We're getting Jalen Tolbert puff pieces, and it's like, and they're not worried about Zeke and Dowdle. And it's like, Jesus Christ, man, are they ever gonna get worried? Because I'm worried.
Yeah. No, I would like the Dowdle one, right? Like, and I would also say like it is helpful to read the pieces, right? Like the Tolbert one. He's like, Jalen Tolbert is, looking to take the next step. And then what's the article say? It's a interview with Tolbert where he's like, I'm looking to follow in the footsteps of CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks. And, he was like watching some of his college tape, and it like restored his faith in himself. Like, I know I can get back to being that guy, that means nothing. None of this means anything. Like, Jalen Tolbert is trying to play good. Like, great. So is everyone else. Like, that doesn't mean anything, and it shouldn't move the needle for us. It is at the same time helpful to know that he does look like pretty penciled in, maybe not penned in, but he is the wide receiver 3 there right now. Like, no one's really challenging him. That is helpful information. So it's this weird time of year where like you get a serving of like helpful depth chart information with like total puff piece bullshit. And so you don't want it. Like, Jalen Tolbert should move up slightly on this news because it confirms what we already thought. The reason we were taking him at all on the 18th is because we thought he probably is the wide receiver 3 on the Cowboys. The confirmation that he is looking like the wide receiver 3 will often be accompanied by additional information that means jack shit, and that then boosts his ADP up another round for no reason. So just be careful of like that extra, the icing of bullshit. Try to ignore. But there might be something actionable underneath.
I totally agree. You hit on so many of the key points. And I just want to reiterate, which obviously we're going to spend a lot of time, I think, probably on this question, but I think it's other than like your initial kind of like, we did an episode on the market, right? And we do like, other than like, okay, let's get my assessments of all these players and all these teams and my assessment of the fantasy market and how that all plays in. This is the next part of this whole draft calendar that is the most impactful, and figuring out what is, and I'm not saying figuring out what, like, it's not always like right versus wrong, but figuring out what, when they're telling us something that is actually like factual, or like you said, a depth chart type of thing, or a commitment to a player. I have an example that I'll bring up that I think is actually kind of interesting through this lens. But like you said, the Cowboys backfield thing, like all the talk from all of us across the fantasy football landscape, but definitely in our best ball niche, is like, well, they're going to bring somebody in, right? Like, that's all everybody keeps saying. It's like, because if we thought there was zero risk for the Cowboys to bring in a running back, both Zeke and Dowdle would go much higher. Even if, like, and aren't you worried about, Zeke and Dowdle's profiles? Yes. Yes. I'm very, very worried. I don't like, I think they both suck at football, but that doesn't really matter. I think we can get into that.
I'm starting to get in. I'm starting to believe, man. I went back and watched him against the Giants week 10 last year. He put a move on a linebacker that
I thought he was okay last year. Yeah. Also, watching Tony Pollard be awful would probably skewed my opinions on watching Rico.
He's also like literally my highest drafted player before I watched that, and so it's possible that have become biased. This is seriously is a pretty sweet move.
You are me with Jameson Williams when Dan Campbell came out with that clip. So Jameson Williams was my favorite wide receiver in that draft class. And I, as you can see with a St. Louis Cardinals hat on, I am a St. Louis person to my core. And I mean, there's a bunch of St. Louis shit behind me, and Jameson Williams is from St. Louis. He was also absolutely unbelievable at Alabama, and I do admittedly have some bias towards like the college football guys that I watch and play in DFS and all that kind of stuff. I think we all do. But I also just like truly believed in him as a player, and that has been painful for 2 years to be a Jameson Williams believer. I actually, do a segment on you guys on Ship Chasing, the live draft show, right during round one that you guys do. And I had a few, Coors lattes in me by that point of the evening, and purchased a Jameson Williams Lions jersey that has never.
We have a lot of jersey purchases on the show. We had Cooter Doodle get a Shaheed jersey. We got your jersey. I assume Leone's just buying jerseys the entire time he's on Ship Chasing. Is that so many? I don't know.
He's just got Fanatics. He pulls up Fanatics the moment he gets onto Ship.
It's just always open.
So the wife's like, "Why every other Thursday are you spending $400 at Fanatics?" But so that, but the Jameson Williams thing, right, is your Rico Dowdle, where I was just like, oh my God, I've been waiting for 3 years for this to finally happen. But I also, you can be inherently biased about it, and also still understand that not just talking about a player, as you said, and not even just saying nice things. Like, think about, like you said, think about the job of a head coach. He is required to speak to the media, and thus has to say something, and they're going to ask him specific questions.
They're going to ask him stuff.
And he doesn't know always, specifically what the questions are going to be. It's his job to sit there and answer them. And he is the coach of, 53, well, now a lot more than 53 guys right now, as a leader of men, as a motivator. What are you going to do when you know this is going to be publicly, if this is whatever you answer is going to be written about, it's going to be posted on Twitter or whatever, and you got to go to the locker room and coach these guys. You're not going to, unless you're a total hardo like Belichick and Mayo or whatever, you're generally going to say something not negative. It may not, you may not wax poetic about how incredible Jamie, he's the most improved player on. That is a different level of hype that I am going to take notice of. But like you said, they just come out and they say, he's improved, right? He's improved from last year. He's working hard.
He's going to stress the defense. The defense is really going to count for him. It's going to be tough on them. That's all that's baseline. Now, I would say, like, I was like, when the Titans' new coaches, they got asked about Traylon Burks. They're like, he's like your slot receiver? And they're like, he's a receiver for sure. I was like, oh, shit. And then they signed Boyd. Yes. And it's like, and then now it's like, okay, yeah, they viewed him as depth. You know, they viewed him as depth, and I think they still view him as depth. And it's not like they're like hate him as depth, but I think that's what they view him as. He's just a wide receiver 4. Like he can probably fill in if any of their other guys are hurt. That's like what. So if you expect, it's weird. It's like the answer should be, what do you think of this guy? Like, oh, he's so great. God, he's the other day he was running so fast. Really, he looked cool. We love him. He's great. He's a hard worker. Just digging in the playbook every day. Can't say enough good things. Next question. Like that's what you want. It doesn't really like make that. That's just like kind of boilerplate. The like, oh yeah, yep, Traylon, he's around for sure. That's horrifying. And then followed up with negative information of them signing Boyd. So yeah, I think like it's not normal. It's not like a normal interaction, right? Where you're, now it can be different. Like if a guy is specifically bringing up someone, right?
Right, not asked, right? He's not asked, or
he's not asked.
They're asked about
someone else, and
Williams.
he kind of
you're asked about
yeah.
someone else, and you're like, yeah, he's looking all right, but he's behind JMO. JMO's really showing, and it's like you took a question about, you took a question about Zeke and you turned it into a Dowdle question. It's like, oh, that's interesting, right? That But these are
how
all
about the Laporta one? So Dan Campbell was like, they're like, what do you think about like Laporta? Like, basically, do you think he's going to be like repeat his numbers? And he's like, he was basically like, no, like I wouldn't necessarily count on him to repeat his numbers because like, what if he loses targets to Jameson Williams? He could lose targets to St. Brown. He could lose targets to Gibbs. He could lose targets to Brock Wright. And that sounds really bearish. But if you actually watch it, he's like, this dude is a worker. This guy does everything we ask him to do. And I don't want him focused on that. Like he had such a good rookie year that it's possible he has an even worse year this year than last year. I couldn't care less about what his numbers are compared to last year because this guy is a star. He does everything we want. I mean, what if he loses targets to Jameson, which is interesting that he said him first, or Saint gets more targets, or Gibbs, or Brock Wright. That's how he's doing a bit. He literally pauses after he says Brock Wright. He waits for a reaction. He started doing a bit. He's not like that was not bearish.
It's like a comedian. When the crowd's laughing, he needs to finish his bit, and you have to pause.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what he's doing.
Yes. So there. I mean, and this is where did I see that? Coach Speak Index. He actually posted that. So actually watching this stuff can be really helpful. You're like, oh, like that. There's nothing there that's bearish. He's complimenting Laporta. He's like, if this guy gets 30 less targets, it's not gonna bother me because I know I can count on him anytime he's out there. So yeah, it takes a lot of parsing.
That's exactly pretty much what I was gonna say. Is there's no like I wish I could tell you like, oh, there's a total science to this, but it's absolutely art and spending some time or having a place like Pat's Discord or our Discord where that's all these people are doing, right? They're sitting on Twitter or they're reading The Athletic every day, and you're going to see every highlight, not even just everything asked in interviews and all of that. But I think that it is very much art and not science. But then like figuring out when it is okay, they're telling us something like the Jalen Tolbert situation, and I'll pivot to a different somewhat different situation where the team is telling us for sure that it's actionable. We can move that guy up a little bit because they have him penciled into the wide receiver 3 situation. But I also don't want to get out over my skis on that because they're penciled into that 4 right now. But like, we see this with ancillary wide receivers all the time. We see this with backup running backs all the time where it's like the guy might get the first shot, and that's powerful. That's impactful. We want to move him up. We care about that. But then I don't want to just say, this is it. It's Jalen Tolbert season. I'm taking him now. Yeah. I'm taking him in the 16th round every time because he's the wide receiver 3 on the Cowboys. It's like, I definitely want to move him up. It matters. But you also get situations like the Tank Bigsby, right? You're getting the Jacksonville Jaguars kind of keep saying, they said this last year, first of all, which was fine. And I don't think we were necessarily wrong. where they're like, we got to lighten the load on ETN. We got to lighten the load on ETN. We drafted Tank to do this. Like, we really love Tank. He needs to, take some touches away, blah, 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 blah. But then Tank wasn't good enough last year to do so. So ETN just wheels up, buddy. You're getting 20 plus every single week. And then eventually Dearness Johnson takes that kind of, secondary back role, stealing a few carries per game. Fast forward. Now we get to this season, same drumbeat around Tank Bigsby, right? Like, we need, we need him to be better. We need him to play. We need him to, I believe there was, I forget what the exact verbiage was, but was basically like, they talked about they should have done some things a little bit better as well. Certainly Tank should have played a lot better. And that's what could have, kept his role. But they're basically telling us, like, we're still going to give this guy a shot. Right. And so, then they did spend a 3rd round pick on him, which is also information that plays into, right. Jalen Tolbert's draft capital is also a part of this equation. If they had drafted another guy, or signed another guy, and he was a 4th, 5th, 6th round pick, it all comes together. It's not ever any one individual thing. Just like with Tank Bigsby, this drumbeat of he's just like Tolbert's the first shot at the wide receiver 3 position with the Cowboys. Tank is going to get the first shot this summer, and probably preseason.
Great news for ETN.
100%. But he's going to get that first shot. That doesn't mean he's going to keep it, right? Yeah. Same thing with Jalen Tolbert. It doesn't mean he's going to keep it. I think back to the Giants last year, right? Jalen Hyatt was the Drake May example of the rookie wide receivers. Goes to the Giants, is running with the 3s all during camp, is playing deep into preseason games because he's not really ready yet to play. But yet, like we talk about all the time with these rookies, even though he was not starting or really playing at the beginning of the season, when he was playing later in the season. And so we still have to balance those kinds of things where it's like, yes, in week 1, I would bet you, assuming health to everyone, that Tank Bigsby gets the first shot in as the backup to the Jaguars. That means he has the best chance to keep it, because once you have it, you have the best chance to keep it, but it doesn't mean he will keep it. And that's the same thing with Jalen Tolbert. So it's kind of this combination of, and this isn't like specific to how do we react to the news, but it's sort of where like we're taking situations that I think that the information is actionable and matters, but also I don't want to take it and say, this is it. It's over. Like, yes. I'm not like,
that's a really good point.
I know you mentioned the Jordan Rodriguez thing where she was kind of, giving us content, giving us some clues, but even then you could take it and say, well, Kyron's still the backup, right? You could say Kyron's still the backup.
He was kind of still the backup.
Right. But guess what happened? Cam Akers stinks, and Kyron Williams is better than Cam Akers, and they hated Cam Akers, right? We had other things to tell us that.
Cam Akers kept quitting every time he didn't get the touchdown.
Exactly. These things are really, really matter. And when we can find them, like Kyron, right? Like Puka drumbeat, like all that stuff. Like what I do think this Jameson Williams thing is powerful, but at the end of the day, they still have to earn it on the field in real football games, and they have to earn it and keep it the whole season. Right. We constantly talk about week 17 is all that matters. Playoffs, get better as be peaking at the end of the season. We're still talking about like week 1 stuff here in most of this news. And so it matters. And I change my rankings just like you do around a ton of this news, not like crazy, but we're adapting based on new information. But I also want to make sure I'm balancing it with, it's like when we talk about during drafting, it's like, is it ADP value or is it roster construction? Well, it's both. And that's the same thing here. It's like, I have new information about Jalen Tolbert, but I also have this other information. Like, it's not like he didn't play. He took like half of Michael Gallup's role. He
340 career routes, and his yards per route run is 0.82. He's got an 11.5% targets per route run over his career. Like, he's not probably very good. So you have to keep like the baseline expectations in your mind throughout. And I do, there's a temptation, I think a very natural temptation, to start to want to just project the week one depth chart, and then that's it. That's the depth chart. I know the depth chart now. But your point of that we don't know the depth chart because we really care about the week 17 depth chart and about the week 8 depth chart, the week 9 depth chart. They look different than the week 1 depth chart. It's not even like this isn't just a week 17 is all that matters thing. It's like week 1 just doesn't matter that much compared to like the middle of the season. We see all sorts of depth chart changes by the middle of the season. And obviously those tend to stick, and then that affects the big money weeks And so we benefit twice there. We might actually be getting the better advance rate player and the player who matters at the end of the year. And so I would say one thing to think about is rookies. Again, rookies, it's just like, it's so important to think through, like, okay, if a guy is getting some buzz and maybe it's overblown, but he is a rookie. And so if there's a chance that he, if any of this is real, they're probably going to try to get a look at him at some point, and okay, guys like kind of not getting that many chances, but he's going to, make the roster. He's probably going to be active on game days or whatever. Like, he was a 3rd round pick. Like, he's probably draftable to some extent, because he'll probably get in the mix towards the end of the season. Even if he doesn't end up doing anything, you'd at least have a chance of, if he's actually kind of good, then maybe he is a hit, a spike week hit late. So that I think is important. On the flip side of that, you've got like your Tyquan Thornton is making noise types of stories. I was skimming through a Bears piece, and they were like, "Oh, Velus Jones is out today." It's like, Velus Jones,
Uncle Velus.
But like, it's like, it is funny. He's like, "Oh, right." Like these guys like they're like, they're there. Like, Velus Jones exists. Like, he's on the roster. Like, so they're like, "Oh yeah, Velus Jones. He's
probably going to return kicks with the new rules."
He'd probably return kicks, right? So, but it's like, no. Like, if Velus Jones is having a day, like, we don't care. He needs to have a month. And maybe a couple months.
And then probably get run with the ones in week 2 of the preseason or what, right? We need
we need a lot.
Yeah.
And second year play. Okay, this is an interesting one, I think. The Giants. So the Giants have Darius Slayton, and I've got a side bet with Pete over that. The silliest side bet, Darius Slayton versus Jalen Hyatt. So this is, but this is why I made the bet, is that, so Darius Slayton is holding out, because he signed a 2-year deal last year. It was like pretty low. Then he had a productive year. So, okay. So they draft Malik Neighbors. They've got Wan'Dale Robinson out of the slot. So it's basically like Jalen Hyatt versus Darius Slayton of who's their other outside starter. And Darius Slayton is like not at OTAs. He's been missing. So they come to an agreement. They didn't give him any more money. They put in incentives into his contract.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Like, he needs to hit like 70 for 1,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
That's like saying if we win a best ball tournament, we get an incentive. Like, sure, it's nice, but I have a 0.00001% chance of it actually happening.
Right. Yeah, that's hilarious. So, but the beat was saying Joe Shane doesn't typically do this. He usually, when someone's not playing, he's like, if you show up, we'll play you. But he doesn't tend to, like, he viewed it as, this is actually like kind of bullish for Slayton that they were willing to play ball with him at all. It's kind of like they were basically like, it was a gesture of goodwill towards a player who's been pretty productive for them. Mm-hmm. And before that, the assumption was that he was starting over Hyatt, and that Hyatt was kind of like in the Traylon Burks, like, backup. However, like,
it's a good comp. Yeah, it's a good
comp. He was in that kind of mold, whereas Slayton's just going to be an outside starter. Now, by the end of the season, maybe it is Hyatt, but Hyatt's not a rookie anymore. And the fact that he got a look at the end of the season, and then they're looking like they're going back to Slayton as the starter, to me is pretty bearish. That's like where I'm like, okay, Hyatt's now, who knows? He's a fast guy. Slayton's nothing special. Like, he could easily take the job over the course of the season. But that's where I'm like, if Hyatt was a rookie in this situation, I'd be like, man, Slayton is an extremely vulnerable starter. By the end of the year, Hyatt's taking that job. But he had a chance to take the job, and it's back to Slayton. And that would lead me to believe that actually Hyatt is in a more vulnerable position at this point.
Yeah, that's a great example of kind of combining all of these different things. And then I would also add, like, Darius Slayton is definitely agreed that, like, from a vulnerability perspective, he would be up there on the list of kind of starting wide receivers who are vulnerable. But he's also not Van Jefferson, right? He's not, this isn't I know Demarcus Robinson was better down the stretch last season, but it's not Demarcus Robinson. It's not McCole Hardman. It's not that kind of guy. He's a little better football player than that. And then, like you said, you pile these other things onto there. We also think about, like, I don't think he's on the hot seat, but like another shitty season for the Giants. And,
I think
Brian Daboll is, yeah, like he might be on the hot seat. It's like, you were supposed to be the wizard to come in here and it kind of went well year one, but it was maybe a little bit fluky. And then, okay, sure, you lost Daniel Jones, but like, buddy, Daniel Jones it's not coming to save your bacon, for your entire tenure here. We got to see some improvements. We gave you Malik Neighbors, right? We invested in the offensive line. Like, we got to start seeing some dividends. And so what I mean by all that is like, he's a little less incentivized unless things do go in the toilet again, right? They win, they're 3-10 or something like that. Unless things go in the toilet, he's not really incentivized to play a worse player who we already saw last year and has been with the team for 2 years now, as opposed to as a rookie. The big perk of the rookie is they just don't really even know, what the guy is.
No one got
to toss him. Yeah, nobody knows. The own player probably doesn't even really know exactly how good he is. So only other point I was going to say about that, which kind of what I was talking about with your rookie example and the depth charts and, week 1 depth chart versus, week 8, week 9, week 17 depth chart. Like, think about Chase Brown, who we now both really, really like. And, going in the 10th, 11th, 12th round, depending upon the space where you're drafting in, was not the backup for the Bengals last year, was not the backup for the majority of the season. They tried to make Travion Williams a thing again. And clearly that didn't work. I drafted some Travion Williams last year because of this. At the end, I was like, we got all summer, we got the photos from Bengals camp, and it was like Joe Mixon, Travion Williams, maybe even Chris Evans, and then Chase Brown. And so I was like, okay, maybe not so much Chase Brown. Maybe I need to get some Travion Williams or whatever. I'm not even saying like that's wrong or right or whatever. But what I am saying is that it's not concrete, right? This isn't Madden. You don't like set your depth chart and then play your, sim your season and that's how it plays out. It's very fluid, and a lot of things impact this, not just the news. So I want to do exactly like what you said with the Slayton thing, where I'm really like digesting all the different stuff about every single one of these situations. And I'm not just saying, the Eagles love Saquon Barkley. Like, what? No shit. Like, no shit. They love Saquon Barkley. Like, they paid him a bunch of money. He's a good football player. We know that. Like, what the Eagles could say absolutely anything to me other than like, we're banning the tush push. Like, they would have to literally,
they would have to
legitimately say, we're never, ever running the tush push anymore. And maybe I would change my stance on Saquon Barkley. That's the only thing that could impact. And they can tell me we're going to throw it to him more. They could tell me he's going to line up in the slot, which we did. We got that with Gibbs already, by the way. That we haven't even made it to June yet. It's still May 31st as we are recording this, and we got the first. We're going to put our running back in and play him with receiver more frequently, by the way. So get ready for a lot of those. Also, speaking of the bullshit,
that's always classic.
Coach Speak Index will help us with that one. By the way, they'll basically say like, this is the 5,000th time a coach has said the wide receiver is going to play.
He's got a running bit with Sean Payton talking about how we gotta get Marvin Mims more touches, man. We just got it. Then it never ever happens.
Yeah. Speaking of Coach Speak Index bullshit, Sean Payton is a peach and all of that. Yeah. I did enjoy him saying, well, I don't want to comp Blake Watson to Alvin Kamara, but here's all the ways in which he reminds me of Alvin Kamara. I was just like, buddy, like, if he's Alvin Kamara, why didn't you draft him?
Peyton, I think Peyton likes the sound of his own voice. So.
He'll be liking the sound of his own voice somewhere besides the sideline here pretty quickly, I think.
Bo Nix. It's up to Bo Nix.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm higher on Bo Nix than the market, but I would not want to put my career on the backs of Bo Nix and Marvin Mims. But no, I think that was. I'm sure we'll be talking about.
Let me. There's one more. There's one more thing. Yeah. So, I think the source on this stuff is important. Some of these, I think, not every beat writer is equally reliable, and I think you see kind of track records on stuff. I would again hold up Jordan Rodriguez, kind of the shining example here, because one, I think
Underhill is also very good.
Underhill's really good. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of I would say there's a lot of really good beat reporters, but I think Rodriguez is interesting because she clearly has like a lot of access.
Tons.
Like that's how that was I keep calling it the wrong thing. It's Play Callers, right? The Play Callers series she did last year. Like she has access to all these coaches, great interviews, and all this stuff. So, but some people have a lot of access, and then they're kind of like a mouthpiece for the coaching staff, or like, and so and she is not like that, which is like the perfect thing where you're getting the access, but then you're getting the critical thinking and the ability to like communicate, not just be like regurgitating what the coach has kind of told you, right? We don't want that. That's not very helpful. If we are getting that, we really want to know that's what we're getting. And I do think there's some cases where you're basically just hearing what the coaches have said. I would, the piece on the Russell Wilson, how he's the clear starter, and that's exactly the way it should be, is the closing line of the piece would lead. I mean, if it feels like Mike Tomlin wrote an article, that's like maybe not the best. I'm just like, you want to be on the lookout for stuff like that, I think, where you're like, this was basically like, if the coach wrote this himself, he would be just as happy. I think that's where you want to take that with like all the salt, especially if there's a track record there that's not strong.
Great point. I'll give one more, because you mentioned what you just outlined is huge. Being able to, again, the kind of art aspect of diagnosing what you're actually reading, right? Because if you just read it without more critical thinking, as you said, you might just say, oh yeah, this guy, oh my God, it's Russell Wilson, whatever, right? Or, oh, it's Jalen Tolbert, if you don't, diagnose it a little bit more deeply, you can run into issues. You also mentioned the takes, the scouting by any beat reporter. I generally ignore it overall, but also, again, Rodriguez says something or Underhill says something in terms of this guy looks good. It can be a little bit different than just Joe Schmo, right? And the Steelers seem to have this issue. I don't really believe a lot of what I hear out of Steelers camp, but you can like really fall into traps of when a beat writer is telling you this guy looks good, because you don't really have any idea if they're right. First of all, they could just be, just catching a pass in 7-on-7s doesn't mean or catching multiple passes instead being open in 7-on-7 doesn't mean you even did anything right. The defense could have screwed up. A guy could be sitting out. Like, you just don't have the context to determine how accurate that is, right? Good versus bad. But then, even if okay, they could be right sometimes. I think back to, I was in college and I thought I wanted to be, a sports reporter or some shit or whatever. I've always been into all this dumb shit. I was obsessed with the St. Louis Rams. Okay. I used to go to training camp a ton. Me and one of my buddies were huge Rams fans. We loved football. We loved the X's and O's of football. We were trying to blog about it and all that stuff on the side, like dumb idiot kids thinking, this mattered or anyone would ever read it. And I went, and I'll never forget year one of Aaron Donald, year one of Lance Kendricks for the St. Louis Rams. And I had the same takeaway on both of them after watching them for a couple days of practice. I said, Aaron Donald is the best defensive lineman I've ever seen in my entire life. This dude is dominating the absolute shit out of and at that time, Rams had decent offensive linemen back then. And I'm like, these guys can't block him. It's unbelievable. I've never seen anything. That was right. I was actually right? My eyeballs were telling me that. Guess who my eyeballs were also telling me was the second coming of Travis Kelce or Tony Gonzalez was Lance fucking Kendricks. Because guess what? The defense couldn't cover him either. It turned out the Rams defense just wasn't very good. And Lance Kendricks also just wasn't very good. He was just a career.
Yeah, he had a moment. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, congratulations. He played 10 years in the NFL. That's great. But that doesn't mean he's good for that doesn't mean I was right that he was going to be a difference-making fantasy player. And so you can there's so much, to think about with all that kind of stuff. And I want to focus on, kind of like everything Pat outlined from an actionable information, but then also be really thoughtful about all the information that we're bringing in.
Yeah. There's sort of video of a guy making a highlight reel catch looks awesome today versus that's kind of fake bullish usually. Not that it never would be signal, but it's there's a lot, you're going to catch a lot of bullshit there. The other side would be, this dude's getting a lot. He's usage with the ones, we're seeing him on specific types of routes that are interesting. Mm-hmm. And the coach and the quarterback are really excited about this guy. They're talking about him, using him in this type of role, blah, 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 blah. that to me is like, okay, this guy's going to get playing time like pretty clearly. I think like the Ladd McConkey stuff has actually been pretty bullish. I know there's like some pictures of him looking small or whatever, but like he's been catching passes from Herbert. He's immediately slotting in with the ones. Like they're not making him kind of earn, rookie stuff. Like he's out there. He's been used in the slot and on the outside, it sounds like. So I think the McConkey stuff is actually kind of sneaky bullish, even though it seems like Davis was laughing about how funny he looked with his Toad helmet and everything. But the usage stuff I think is really just so much more important than kind of like the how they look stuff.
I do just want to say the Ladd thing is sort of funny to me because one of the tweets or article or whatever was like Ladd McConkey has been a standout at Chargers camp or whatever. And I'm like, well, I should fucking hope he's a standout.
Yeah, please, man.
Like Jesus Christ, if he's not standing out next to Quentin Johnson and Brendan Rice, like I fucking hope he's standing out. If he wasn't, can you imagine how bad it would be if he wasn't standing out? Against like I'm drafting this guy 65 overall. I hope he's better than Quentin Johnson. So I'm not saying it is or isn't bullish, but that's where my mind, what people are like, oh yeah, Ladd hype. And I'm like, is that really hype or is it just how bad his teammates are? I'm not totally sold just yet, but just funny. Again, just a funny example of how chaotic all this stuff is. Like who the heck really knows?
One last thing would be there's over the years, I've noticed that there's some teams that just don't get covered as well.
Yeah.
Right. Some teams get covered really, really well, in depth, great beats, and a lot of them. Other teams, they're just like not that many. And so I think like you might have to dig a little deeper on certain teams. The Cardinals have typically been one where you have to dig a little deeper.
Fucking poverty franchise. The players have to pay for their own meals and sodas and stuff. So they're not exactly giving a lot of access to beat reporters.
Right. And but sometimes the stuff you get on those teams, like it's worth digging on those teams because not like we're all going to hear the Patriots stuff. The Patriots stuff's going to come. There's a million Patriots beats and they're very good. And we're just going to get a lot of Patriots news over the course of the year, like they're over the course of the summer. So like, but the Cardinal stuff, if you're like willing to go dig and find some Cardinal stuff, podcasts, can be a way to do this. Last year, or was it 2 years ago? I think it was last year. We got the immortal. Was it Darren Urban who was on with
Darren Urban? Yeah,
Darren Urban. Yeah. So he's the guy for the Cardinals that Pat and Denny had on the podcast, and he was telling us that Colt McCoy was pointing at the receivers because he couldn't throw. And then sure enough, McCoy, now this isn't the most actionable thing ever, but they were like, no, Colt McCoy will not be playing quarterback. He's literally pointing at who he would be throwing to because he can't throw.
So that's next level. We joke about the guys doing stuff in shorts and all that kind of, and on air, right? They get the clips on Twitter of the guy running routes on air in shorts. It's like, this is taking that to a whole nother. They're not even using a football.
Yeah. So, maybe that was 2 years. I can't remember, but whatever it was, but if you can get some of the stuff on the teams that are a little less covered, it's definitely worth digging because some of like all of it's the same information that we need, like all of this stuff is basically small. It's all small stuff, but it's important stuff, but it's like it's not like there's no like breaking news, like Keontae Ingram running with the twos. Like that's not how this works. It's all like really small around the edges things. And so you kind of just want to be like keeping up with it. These are like little bullet points that you want to read every day. It's like you kind of want to get in the habit of just checking every day to make sure there's nothing that's surprising. And there will be things that are surprising. Right. And you just want to be like, oh, that isn't what I thought. Like the Jets one, right? I'm like, I would have thought this is like a legit, like muddled mess for who the running back 2 is. And right away, it seems like, no, it's probably Braylon out.
Yep.
that's interesting to me. That does not fit with my prior. I'm updating that.
I just drafted him this morning.
Yeah.
Partially because of that. Another good thing that it can do is of course, I'm not trying to just draft a guy that I see in a news blurb, but like you said, when you get some of that, you can also, like, I haven't been taking much Braylon Allen, and I'm drafting 0 running back teams, and it's like, well, I keep taking whatever fucking player, at that price. I keep taking Evan Hall, or I keep taking whoever, and it's like, well, this is a good reason, a good reminder. Like you said, we get stuck in our ways, as you say this all the time, right? We're humans, and we have our biases. We take shortcuts, and it's like, well, this is a good way to help avoid those shortcuts, even though you're fully willing to admit, like, it doesn't change a lot, but it's something, and it's interesting. And he was draftable before. He was some varying level of draftable before. It's like, well, now this can remind me to
he was in the rankings already. I just moved him up, and I think. It's also like, you can make fun of the part where they're like, he's a pass catcher. Like, yeah, right. Get out of here. You can make fun of that and then also be like, but he's slightly more draftable than before.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Jalen Tolbert still sucks, but guess what? I'll draft him a few spots higher now because of
Bateman, right? Is Bateman going to have a breakout season?
Jesus Christ.
We're hoping he's Darius Slayton. We're hoping he's Darius Slayton on the Ravens.
This Bateman stuff is out of fucking control. Like, I never seen more, like, Rashad. I use this analogy a lot, but Rashad Bateman feels like the greatest example of fetch in fantasy football that I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, we are trying. I don't mean we, me, and you. I don't mean the fantasy industry, but it was like the Ravens decided, no, we're trying to make this motherfucker happen. I don't care what anybody else says. I don't care how bad he sucks. I don't care about anything. Just listen, guys. It's Rashad Bateman season, and it might be. It could be. He's in my same thing. He's in my rankings. He's draftable to me. I'm not, totally avoiding Rashad Bateman, but it's like, that's one where I'm like, I kind of already knew he was going to have the shot to prove that he's better than he was before. Them hyping him up, from running in shorts doesn't change all the other things. It just is like, it confirms, like, oh no, he's not going to, like, get benched week 1 for Tez Walker, right? He's not going to.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. No, I mean, the fetch thing is pretty gutting because I'm the one who's trying to make it happen in this case. So you're being a real Regina George right now, Eric.
Well, at least we figured out a better Bateman line for this year. I'm glad that we did that last week, I believe.
Have we?
Where it's the theoretical Jermaine Burton line. Where would you draft Jermaine Burton if T. Higgins was not on the team? That is the new Bateman line, so I can stop talking about Rashad Bateman. But
your point about him not being bench for Tez Walker, I mean, that is actionable, and you're like, okay, yes, he will probably start the season. It's the Slayton thing, but Walker's a rookie.
Yep.
And Hyde is not. So I'm more worried about. Now, the nice thing is, right, that in this case we have the third receiver would be Aguilar as opposed. Correct. So it's actually a competition for the wide receiver too. So it makes me a little bit better about drafting Bateman, but that's where, like, who am I more nervous about getting passed by the guy behind him? It would be Bateman. Walker could just take the job in a way, because Walker might be really good. Is Hyatt really good? Probably not.
Right. We have it's interesting because I was talking. I know this is not a question, but we can probably somehow relate it to. Actually, let's. I'm going to steal, and then we'll go to you because
question 2 at the 53-minute mark.
Yes, this is peak legendary sickos. By the way, we've made subject number 2 of a mailbag, and we've pulled one letter out of said.
It's fourth. We're doing part 18 of the same mailbag. We haven't gotten new questions.
You guys didn't understand that this was just us planning out our whole summer. This is just our planning out our whole summer. Yeah, somebody's like, somebody asked a question, what do you think about the Braylon Allen news? And we answered on August or whatever. But this so to the he's probably bad point, I thought it was a good segue into the CTO of Spike Week, who has built all of the tools. Hacker asked, and it was he wrote more than this, but the general thesis is like, how are you determining good versus bad players, and like, what are you looking at? How are you thinking about the good versus bad thing? I actually thought it was an interesting segue again from Bateman. I mentioned Tank Bigsby. And we always, we joke about Van Jefferson, we joke about Josh Jacobs, right? We joke about all of these guys. And I don't necessarily think like in terms of metrics, specific metrics, I think that's very up in the air and nuanced into determining things. But I think the idea around good versus bad players is a really fascinating one, because you will often hear people say, including myself, where like, I think he's just good, or I think he just sucks, but there's, again, similar to the news thing, is like, there's so many layers to all of that. And so, the rookie thing, right? Like you said, Tez Walker, rookies provide a level of, even ignoring the prospect profiles, which you and I care about, a lot of people care about prospect profiles. They provide a level of uncertainty and variance that no matter your profile, we just don't really know what you are as a player. You could have the best profile of all time and stink in the NFL. You could have a not very good profile and be amazing in the NFL. I think both of those are generally unlikely scenarios, but that doesn't mean that they can't exist. You can be a good player as a rookie, a la, let's say, Dameon Pierce. You can be pretty solid as a rookie and be a bad player, right? And not be a good player. That can happen. You can be bad as a player. I mentioned Tank Bigsby as this example. Probably sucks. Jalen Hyatt probably sucks, because we have some evidence that they do suck, but they are
Bigsby,
also,
I feel much stronger about there.
For sure. But still, he had 50 carries.
Yeah, that's true. It's a small sample. Yeah.
Has 50 NFL carries. Again, if we're betting, if DraftKings, if the sportsbooks posted odds of, does this player suck, yes or no, the yes on Tank Bigsby is going to be minus 500, right? Or whatever. Yeah. But there are still, that still is not it's still not 100% that Tank Bigsby sucks, because the sample is small. And we do have, I'll set aside what we might think about his prospect profile. There were reasons to believe coming out of Auburn.
I thought he was interesting. I thought he was like third round dynasty pick kind of guy. Yeah. Like lots of guys like in this class that I'm like, oh yeah, I'll take a crack. He fits with a bunch of guys in this class, like a Ray Davis. Like if Ray Davis is horrendous, like if Ray Davis is literally Tank Bigsby, I won't be surprised.
Yeah, 100%.
But I'd rather take a crack on him because he might not be.
Right. It could literally, Ty Johnson could be the Dearness Johnson of the Bills, and we're just like, oh yeah, actually Ty Johnson's just better than Ray Davis, because Ray Davis is Pat and I's age, and that's generally not a great indicator. But back to this is I love this question, because it's like people want answers of like, how do you know who's good and bad? And it's like, well, I don't, but I'm weighing various different things. And then also, just because I think like I said, if you gave me a 50-50 odds, me and you were betting $10 and I got to pick first, is Tank Bigsby good or bad? Of course I'm picking he's bad. I'll take your money every single time, over the long haul doing that. But it doesn't mean he's undraftable, right? It doesn't mean Jalen Hyatt is undraftable. It doesn't mean, I hate Keon Coleman. We did recorded an episode yesterday where Keon Coleman, I said, was one of the worst picks in fantasy, because I think he stinks and I think his prospect profile is terrible. And the market has said, no, we don't care. He's going to go, in the top 70 or whatever. I'm not interested in talking about Keon Coleman, but the good versus bad thing is like, we do need to do that, because at the end of the day, all the shit we talk about is great. If you could tell me who the good NFL players are and who the bad NFL players are with 100% certainty, I'm going to win a lot of fucking money in fantasy football. I'll take my shots, right? If you're good, you're good. DJ Moore last year. Justin Fields, we don't know how good he is. They're going to run a lot. Guess what? DJ Moore is a superstar. It didn't matter. Keenan Allen, right? Getting older, whatever. He was still a superstar. Absolutely doesn't matter. Achane, superstar. These guys, super Puka, Tank, superstar. If you're good, you overcome and you can mask so many other things. Yeah. So it matters, but like
ceiling and floor. Talent is ceiling and floor.
And so how do you think about like, how are you assessing, your good versus bad players? And then just how do you think about that dynamic of I'm never 100% sure who's good and bad, but when do I really lean into that? When do I, give guys, not a pass, right? I'm not giving Tank Bigsby a pass, but I do think he's draftable in the last round of fantasy drafts type of a thing. You know what I mean? Like that balancing act is tough.
It is. I do think we have the advantage of a lot of the market not even caring. Like they don't even care.
True.
Like to me, the Saquon Barkley thing of like, how good is Saquon Barkley? And no one really seems to care. Like it's like, what are you saying? Like he's amazing because like we throw out everything he did with the Giants for the last few years, his receiving efficiency, which has actually never really been that good. And now he goes to the Eagles, which don't throw to the running back. So his receiving efficiency is going to be terrible. I mean, DeAndre Swift is getting held up as like, oh, he's going to be this receiving back for the Bears. Don't look at his yards per route run from last year. But, maybe we do throw out the yards per route run from last year because it was on the Eagles. But that doesn't make me feel good about Barkley, So there's this thing. And then you look at Barkley's whole career. It's like, oh, he's a boom bust runner. He's explosive. Like to me, Saquon Barkley is pretty good. I think he's pretty good. Mm-hmm. But I don't think he's a star. I don't. Maybe he was a star, right? As a rookie, he was a star for sure. But the NFL is brutal, and how good these players are changes year to year in big ways. And so to me, like, if you're telling me that I have to predict talent better than everyone else trying to predict talent, that's going to be tough. But if I'm trying to predict talent and most people like aren't even trying or don't care, or you tell them like, I don't think this player's that good, and they go, doesn't matter. It does matter, like a lot. Like it might be like the whole game that we need these guys to be good because they have to produce at the end of a long season, and it's really helpful. It's not like the opportunity matters, and bad players can produce in good situations. I'm not saying they can't, but if the market is saying that's all they care about, just tell me the situations, and then they're leaving me talent. Like it doesn't matter. Like I get to just pick through and pick out all the best players. Like that's an amazing edge. So now we're not going to be perfect in our ability to figure out which guys are good, but we're given the opportunity to try. Like trying is an edge. So we have to try. We absolutely have to try. What I try to do is I try to figure out basically using the various metrics and stuff. I've been trying to basically price players where I think they should kind of tier out players where I think they should go kind of from a talent perspective or from an opportunity, maybe talent plus some opportunity perspective, but not a projection, not like what I'm trying, not what I think they will earn in terms of yards and targets and everything. And therefore then that gives them wide receiver 25. Right. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to say basically like, here's a profile. This profile, based on what has happened historically and kind of like the overall archetype, what do I think this profile is generally worth in terms of a bet? So let's say JSN, for example, because this is what I'm arguing with, and I'd be curious to get your thoughts on, because I'm arguing with some of the guys that help me with the rankings. I'm a little bit more bearish on JSN. So like I look at yards per route run, 1.3. Sorry, I just had it up. It was like 1.39, I think, yards per route run, or 1.32. It's something in there. And not good, but not terrible. Typically, a rookie who is 1.32 yards per route run. Typically, a rookie in that range it's not like a death sentence, but it's usually historically, it's going to be a couple years before you like blow up. It's like you might be 2 years away from a blow up. Now, if you have a 0.5, you're probably done. I'll never hear from you again. If you got, a 1, maybe it's borderline, maybe 2-3 years. If you're at like 1.75, I'm interested. If you're at like 1.9, we could be talking about a second year massive breakout. That's where CeeDee Lamb was, right around 1.9 yards per route run. So it's not the be all end all, but the yards per route run I think helps us kind of get kind of close, right? Now, in his case, he also is dealing with a 19% targets per route run, which is not very good, especially that's kind of tight end number where you'd be like, all right, if you're a tight end, you're in that range. Like that's what Jake Ferguson has. Same targets per route run as Jake Ferguson. Not ideal for a wide receiver.
And adjusting for slot, you're
in the slot
as a slot receiver, you are in on passing plays that are more beneficial for slot players. That's why you are specifically out there, because that role is a key cog in your passing game, right? The Gabe Davises of the world never leave the field. Sometimes they're out there for something that they're not even in on the play, right? Screen passes to somebody else and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying they don't have that for slot receivers. They do, but you should just naturally be targeted more per route as a slot receiver, because you're kind of just strictly a pass game player as opposed to the outside guys, which of course you don't run routes on running plays, but
your route rate's lower.
You run less routes, and the plays that are out of base packages and 2 wide receiver stuff is just so different from a slot receiver, right? And your role is just different.
The other thing is that your ADOT is correlated with targets per route run. So the lower your ADOT is, it's negatively correlated. The lower your ADOT, the higher you would expect the targets per route run to be. The best, if your ADOT was 25, right, you would expect a pretty low target per those routes. You're just constantly just running clear out routes. You're not getting targeted a lot. If your target's 6.4, like Jaxon Smith-Njigba's was, you would expect bit of a higher targets per route run, and his was lower. So that's a bit more of a concern.
For reference on this, like from an ADOT perspective. So like Tyreek Hill what Tyreek Hill did last year was just fucking stupid, by the way. Like it's
insane. It's
absolutely insane. So there's only 2 players, including the postseason, who had a greater than a 3 yards per route run. Tyreek Hill and Nico Collins, actually. Tyreek at 3.72 yards per route run. Is truly unbelievable. Nico at 3.11, but Tyreek had an ADOT of 11.3 as a reference. So what you want to talk about, like how do you determine good versus bad? If you have a 3.72 yards per route run on a 12, almost a 12 ADOT in an offense, you are not only good, you are one of the best wide receivers.
You're historic. Yeah.
But to the ADOT point, right? If JSN's getting an 8 out of 6 and Tyreek is getting an 8 out of 11 or 12, like the target levels I'm not trying to compare him to Tyreek Hill, but comparing target levels at different ADOTs, that's a reference point. That Tyreek's ADOT was double basically what Jaxon Smith-Njigba was doing.
Yeah, it's why I personally prefer yards per out run to targets per out run, because it's kind of baked in. The yards per target is
sort of
correlated with
already.
ADOT. Yeah, so it's sort of basically mixed in. And I actually think yards per target has like a small amount of signals, so I just prefer yards per out run because I like the yards per target to be in there. It helps ADOT, helps correct for the ADOT. Anyway, but targets per out run is useful to look at as well. The okay, so you go to like Jaxon Smith-Njigba's open score, right? So I'm like, okay, this guy doesn't look terrible to me, but it was not impressive. Open score of 45, which is not a good number. Wide receiver 79. He was tied with Jamison Williams, actually, just ahead of Allen Robinson. But he was like ahead of Terry McLaurin, ahead of Jordan Addison. Open score is a metric that I tend to find really interesting at the very top and the very bottom. Devontae Parker was last in the league. Jonathan Mingo was second last. Cedric Tillman was third last. Quentin Johnson was fourth last. Van Jefferson, fifth last. Michael Gallup, Juju Smith-Schuster, Alan Lazard, DJ Chark, Jalen Tolbert, Alec Pierce. This is the bottom of the list.
It's really great.
97th. He lost his job.
It's especially really great. I'm glad you mentioned that. So you ran down that list and everybody was probably like, yep. Makes sense, right? But then sometimes you'll get a guy, right? You get amongst your Jonathan Mingos and Devontae Parkers and Alec Pierce's and stuff where you're like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. You'll get a name where you're like, oh, shit. And maybe some of his other metrics actually don't match, right? And then that's really to our news, our camp news stuff is like, that's a nugget that plays into, if you only look at that one thing, right? And I would say, like you said, yards per route run, yards per target is kind of like, if I'm just like quick, I need an answer on something, like that's where I go to kind of get a quick gauge. But you can pull these other things in where you're like, oh, actually he doesn't look terrible over here, but this one says he was awful, and that all plays into that perception.
Yeah, no, and I think in this case, like I'm looking for something. My baseline assumption on JSN would be like, wasn't a great rookie year, and then you go to open score, and there's nothing. The open score doesn't make it worse, I don't think, but it doesn't make it better, and I want something to make it better, right? And it doesn't achieve that. Open score at the very top, I think, can be interesting. Khalif Raymond was third, which kind of has him in the back of my mind when I'm at the last round. Yeah, I know it's kind of crazy. And then, but his yards per out run was also really good. So it's like, oh, now Khalif Raymond's probably like the third wide receiver on the Lions and is not really going to do anything. But that's like, some of this stuff that seems weird can actually be like, maybe this dude has got a little more juice than we thought. Anyway, at the very top and the very bottom of open score, I think it's pretty useful metric. In the middle, he's at the sort of the bottom of the middle, but he's like kind of in the middle. So open score doesn't necessarily make me too nervous, but it's not helpful. I don't feel better. Then I went and I checked out JJ's second year wide receiver model, which is excellent. He noted that JSN was really disappointing from his first year to his second year. So he said, I'd sell JSN now if I was getting a discount on another high-end second-year wide receiver. In return, his drop in score is troublesome, but he still has a pretty high score because he had a really good prospect profile. So it's kind of like, let's not panic, but this is disappointing and we should factor that in. I checked that as reception perception, which Matt Harmon was a bit more optimistic. But if you look into the profile, it's like I said, overall Smith-Njigba success rate versus coverage marks are fine to good, albeit perhaps not special. That's generally how I feel about his film as a whole. There's nothing wrong with that from a rookie receiver, depending on where your expectations lie. So, okay. I'm getting a lot of information now that's like, this dude did not impress as a rookie. I think that's like, I'm really struggling to find anything impressive from his rookie season. He's a slot receiver for the Seahawks with two other good receivers. Where do I think that? Now, I'm betting on the prospect profile. I'm still down to bet on the prospect profile. But what do I think an unimpressive rookie year? Now the situation stuff starts to be concerning to me in a way that it wasn't last year, because he has to be awesome to displace those concerns, right? Like the situation concerns, right? I'm down. Give me Rome Odunze on the Bears, but what if he's amazing, right? JSN, I'm getting all this information that he's probably not amazing. I'm starting to feel pretty confident that he's not going to be like a superstar. So to me, it's like the 8th round. I think he'd be a good pick in the 8th round. He goes in the 7th round on underdog. I'm mixing him in. I'm at like 4 or 5%. You can get him in like the 9th round on FFPC. If I can, find a fast draft that fills that I don't forget about in auto drafts, I'll draft him over on FFPC. But that's, to me, I'm like, funnily enough, I kind of end up in the middle of two pricing on two sites where I basically I came to I think in the 8th round is about where I would feel comfortable taking this on. But it's a difficult one because, I know Sean Siegel's really into JSN and is much more, and I know Ben Gretsch really likes him. And to them, I think the prospect profile is carrying more weight, not as concerned about the rookie year as I am.
Yeah.
I get that. I think, but to me, and I think they're kind of coming at the same way of to them, this profile is just worth more. To me, this profile is worth like an 8th round pick. To them, it's worth more. And I can understand why, because the prospect profile was really good. So it's how much are you weighing those things? But anyway, those are with receivers, probably the metric that would be like a journey, a look into my journey on JSN as I was trying to figure out exactly where to land on it.
Another interesting thing about JSN is so it's something that I don't even know if this is right or wrong, but to piggyback on your kind of your user journey from my tech nerd days. You went down the user journey of this. How do I scout a player? How do I try to determine? And again, it's how do you determine? The question is, how do you determine good versus bad? It's generally not like that. It's generally where it's a sliding scale. How good, how bad.
How good do you need this player to be to hit?
Exactly. And so when I start to go through everything like you just meant, right? You go down the line. I'm like, all right. First thing, I'm gonna go look at the basic metrics that I care about the most, and you're like, whatever. He's just blah. And then you work your way down, right? And let's look for some more information to see if it tells me anything, right? There's some additional context, all that kind of stuff. You work your way down. You never really found anything, and you're like, yeah. So I'm still basing the upside case on his prospect profile, and so I'll actually then take it one step further and go back to said prospect profile and think about it. And I'm not trying to change the story necessarily, but I am trying to think is there anything could we be wrong about this, right? Because it's all of us say, right, and we say it all the time. It's also we got to stop overusing the word he has such a good profile, right? Or he had a bad profile. Like, what the fuck does that even mean? Like we just
No,
use the
don't
word
take
profile.
my shorthand away from me, man.
The
on.
profile shorthand
we
gotten a little
we need
out
more.
of control.
You and I need more shorthand, not less.
Yes, that is a fact. So we need to just say good profile, bad profile for everybody, as opposed to actually talking about that. But we do that all the time, right? Where it's like, well, he had a good profile, like, or that's the rage now. The profile is such a funny word. People, well, he had a good profile. It's like, did he? Like I don't know. You're saying he had a good profile, but like what? He's not fucking. He wasn't Jamar Chase. Like Jamar Chase had a good profile. Again, I'm not saying Jaxon Smith-Njigba didn't, but then you go back and you look like, okay, clearly the early breakout, what he did as a true sophomore was unbelievable at Ohio State. But that's it.
It's thin. It's really thin.
It's all that 1 year.
I mean, like as a resume, like he had one job and he for a year, and then he took a year off, right? He did like a semester abroad. He just, he backpacked around Europe. Yep. Like we never got the other season. So we have like this one thing he did that was cool, but then he showed up for work and like kind of wasn't that great.
Yeah, he's a successful, early startup founder that sold his company for millions of dollars. And then the next company he starts, everybody comes back around and they want to invest in it because this guy, this guy created that app and he sold it for $100 million. He's a fucking genius. Everything he does is going to be great. And it's like, well, he did that one good thing, but is he actually like a great, entrepreneur? I don't know yet, because he only did one thing and he was successful at it, and then they fail the next 3 startups and they piss away all this VC money. And that's kind of what JSN is doing to us. But it's like that 1 year was awesome. Then like I start to dig into it then too, right? It's like his one really, really, really monster game, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave didn't play. And then, oh, by the way, who his quarterback was? CJ Stroud. And like, who's pretty good? CJ Stroud. Who we do know is good? Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And it's like he was playing the slot next to those guys. And like, I'm not saying that the profile isn't good, but
without the information of the NFL stuff, I was going, get that out of my face, man.
Yep.
This dude could be a superstar, first round pick, really efficient, really productive. So what if he didn't play with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson in that game? He took over the offense as soon as he got a chance to. The ceiling, man. Think about the ceiling. But the ceiling is what took a hit here. You don't come into the NFL and do what generally, not to say he can't. And here's the other thing, right? When is the ceiling? When is the ceiling? Because sometimes the ceiling is 2-3 years down the line, 3-4 years down the line. To me, the lesson with Davante Adams isn't like every receiver can be terrible and then eventually be a superstar. It's actually that if you're that bad that early, it takes many years to dig out of it. And
that's a good point.
That, to me, that's the lesson. Now, JSN was never as bad as Adams was early, but he was as bad as Bateman was, and it's like and I loved Bateman, and I was in on JSN. This isn't fun for me, but like this type of rookie season is generally not followed by a massive second year breakout. It's generally followed, even in like good scenarios, by someone kind of like putting it to like taking a step forward. Like a good season to me for JSN would be like 1.67 yards per hour, 1.7 yards per hour. Good. Like he's out there. He's good. He's not amazing. And then like the year after, we get like an old school 3rd year breakout because Tyler Lockett's gone and they're feeding him a little bit more. And it's like Tyler Boyd, kind of like the Tyler Boyd, which I believe was a 3rd year breakout, that kind of vibe. That to me is like where we're headed with JSN, where I'm not saying he can't ever be an awesome fantasy football type of investment, but I just think after that rookie season, my prior would be, if we get a breakout, it's more likely to be a year, like a true breakout. It's more likely to be year 3 than year 2 after that kind of rookie season.
Yeah, I love that. And I think hopefully that whole kind of, again, that journey that we went through provides some context into how to think about, right, when you're like, if you're interested in looking into, who's good and who's bad. That's mostly receiver focused things. Quarterbacks are kind of a little bit easier. Tight ends, obviously, along a somewhat similar line, but of course, different nuance. nuance and textures. But I think the real point is, like, again, art versus science is very much an art. We try to make it a science and say, like, okay, here's 3 metrics and here's why that guy is good. But like, we can eat, there's so much gray, right? It's not black and white. There's so much gray on so many of these players, particularly younger players. Obviously, the Keenan Allens and such of the world, is, we know that they're good. It's more, is he going to stay good? Is he going to stay good as he ages, as Devontae Adams, et cetera? But figuring out early in careers who is good versus bad is a very difficult process. And most of the time, you're going to get a bunch of different variables, right? You pull in 10 different things, and 7 of them tell you bad and 3 of them tell you good. And how do you figure that out? It's kind of up for everybody. The profile joke is kind of why I make that, because everybody has different assessments of all these things. But I just wanted to say a very original point, which goes not exactly to the question being made here, is a big shift that I made this year. I've always been very cognizant of, like, focusing on talent, because I believe, like I said, at the end of the day, if you could tell me one, right, we always do if you could know one thing about this, like, upcoming season or whatever, what would it be to give you an edge in your best ball drafts? And people always say, like, oh, well, the week 17 score. So, like, yeah, sure. Besides that, like, that one's easy. But, like, it would be, if you could tell me ironclad 100%, I know who all the best players are, how good they are, right, how bad they are. If you could tell me, the Madden rate, give me Madden ratings, but for real life, for every single one of these players, if you could tell me that, like, this game would be so easy. This game would be incredibly easy.
Yes.
Right? If I
just knew the Madden ratings, oh my god.
Yeah. If I knew Jaxon Smith-Njigba was a 66 on Madden, it's like, no, I'm not drafting 66 overall, player in the 7th round, right? Or you told me that, the Houston Texans wide receivers. You told me the Madden ratings for the 3 Houston Texans wide receivers. This would be a pretty fucking easy game, like, to figure out. It's just, I don't know the Madden ratings for the Houston Texans wide receivers, but exactly like what you said. Why do I care? Why are we even talking about this? Is because our opponents don't give a shit. They don't care, right? So I've made a bigger shift this year. All my pre-draft content, right? Why am I anti Keon Coleman? It's not because I think I'm going to be right about every single one of these players. It's because my opponents don't care. It's because I believe, right, X, Y, Z, here's 10 things about JSN and why he may not be good, and why, if he's good, it might be 2 or 3 years down the road. Same thing for me, like, with a Keon. He could be good. Players can get better, right? Things happen. Tank Bigsby could get better, but it's probably just most likely that they stink. How many prospect profiles come along with the truly putrid? Like, we were making fun of Jaxon Smith-Njigba's professional yards per route run. You should go look at Keon Coleman's college yards per route run. They're like the same. You should be a little better in college if you're going to be a superstar, right? I don't need him to be good. I need him to be a star in the NFL to win me money in fantasy. So I'm caring about all that. I'm not going to be right, but I'm caring about these indicators of who is good and bad, because when I'm right about who's bad, that's a huge, avoiding the bad players is huge. And then finding the good players, especially undervalued ones, is massive. Like, it is, if you look at last year, dude, Tank Dell is amazing. 2.2 yards per route run, 18th in the NFL, which has Steven Sims on there and Bo Melton and shit on there. So he's really a top 15 yards per route run player in the NFL, right? Puka Nacua, Achane, etc. These guys that are really, really good, and they're undervalued because the market's like, I don't really care that his profile, he might be pretty Tank Dell was pretty goddamn awesome, in college, where he's too little, right? We hate the Texans.
An older player, there were red flags. There were legit red flags, but he was also really productive.
Yeah, absolutely red flags. But if the talent can outshine the red flags and I'm getting a discount on those guys because of it, like, and you can find them, those are the big hits. And the big miss it, right? We talk about big hit, small win, or what does Ben call it? Small, small big miss, hit, small big miss. Win. Yeah, exactly. And the inverse of both of those things is, like, a lot of the times it comes down to talent. And so if I'm going to miss, I would like to miss betting on a guy who really possibly could have been a mega talent. And if I'm going to miss on a guy who hits, I would like to miss on a guy who's like, actually, he's just not that good. It just, he scored some fantasy points, right? Like, Brandon Cooks isn't that good anymore. Last year, he caught 8 touchdowns. I wouldn't want to continually draft Brandon Cooks in the 7th round like people did last year.
Right.
Because guess what? He's just not very good. He just stumbled into some touchdowns.
Yeah, I think so. The final piece of this is, again, price, underlining the price of this. Like, what do you need for the price? How good do we need the player to be for the price? And my feeling is that we need the players, when we're paying first and second round picks, we need them to be superstars. That's why we're picking them first or second, right?
Yep.
So you really should be focused on talent there. That's, again, kind of the concept of legendary upside really just comes down to, are these guys talented enough to take over a fantasy season? I think a lot of the reason why it makes sense to draft wide receivers before running backs is because they're better football players. You're
Yes.
getting a chance to draft the better football players. Everyone's like, oh my God, this guy who I don't think is good is going to get a bunch of touches, so I will draft him over one of the top 10 football players that I have available to me. What? Why would you do that?
The NFL, look at, I know it positional value and all that kind of stuff, but that's the point of who's better or worse is the value that they bring to their team. Go look at what wide receivers get paid and go look at what running backs get paid. The NFL's telling you who's better and more valuable as well, but we don't like to listen.
It's a skill-based position. It's a position that the talent shines through and talent sustains, that these guys it's not just pure athleticism. It's like a skill. Obviously, running backs are skilled as well. But I mean, I think the NFL is kind of telling us there that, these top end wide receivers, these guys are true superstars. And we, I think have done a better, that's one thing I think it's driving these prices is that people are understanding, oh, I'm actually getting the better player, the real life player. Like, this is simpler. It's actually simpler and more in tune with reality. We're drafting the better player. I mean, Sean Siegel talks about this all the time. Like, we're just taking the good players. This is not complicated, and as we move down the draft, I've tried to do a better job of moving away from that to an extent where I'm going, okay, does Rachaad White need to be that good if I'm getting him in the 7th, which is what we did on Chip Chasing the other night. We got him in the 7th. That's fine. He doesn't even need to be that good at that price because the receivers who is he better than the receivers in this area? Like, probably, I just talked about JSN having concerns, about how good he is. And so Rachaad White have also got concerns, and he certainly projects for more touches. So at this point,
Keon, JSN, Christian Watson, he might just be better than
I have concerns about them too. So I'm sort of like, I don't know who's talented, and this guy has more touches. That's a really nice tiebreaker, especially since I need a running back right now. I think we have one running back to that point and like 4 receivers or something like that. So maybe even 5 receivers by that point. I can't remember. But so we're, using the talent that we need kind of declines as the draft goes on. And it comes to a certain point where, I might end up writing a thread about Robert Woods, like a total dummy, instead of taking Tank Dell, where you start to think the talent doesn't matter at all. It still does at the end of the draft, as it turns out. It still does matter. But I think you're willing to, as the price goes down, I think we should be willing to overlook more and more red flags.
Yeah.
And, bet on roles, bet on, this guy has a place on the depth chart kind of stuff. The Jalen Tolberts, like where we were
bet on the fact that he's a big underdog to be good. Right.
He's an underdog to be good. Yeah.
We think he's probably bad, but that doesn't right. The JSN thing, we're saying we think he's probably bad, which is really bad for a 7th round pick. But the cheaper you get is like, we still think, right. That's why they go late. We continue to think these guys are bad, and they get worse and worse as the draft goes on. But it doesn't mean it's a 0% chance some of them, right? Devontae Parker, like it was a 0% chance that he's not going to change overnight, even though his first name's Devontae. You can weigh, right? You weigh the things differently as the price gets.
And so, okay. Another thing with Devontae Adams and Tyler Boyd stuff, because I think DeMarc probably has learned the wrong lesson from Devontae Adams, which is that any bad receiver can eventually be a superstar. But I do think there are some lessons with Devontae Adams. One thing is that, it can take a few years, but okay. So let's look at Devontae Adams yards per out run by year. 1.06 is a rookie. 1.08 as a sophomore. Then he went to 1.63, so took a big jump there. 1.76, 2.12, 2.61, 2.75, 2.81 peaks in his last year in Green Bay. So nice and linear. That's real nice on the brain, isn't it? Just up, just steady up all the time. But that jump from 1.08 to 1.63 is actually pretty massive and unexpected. right?
Yeah.
And so what were you, this is when we'd all given up. He was a joke. Jeff Janis was going to be the guy, right? But in this period, and this is back in 2015, so a lot of people probably weren't playing then or don't remember.
Who the fuck is Jeff Janis? Yeah, that's what people are saying.
This was very much kind of the coach speak stuff of who's starting for you. Is it Davante Adams? What's going on? And it's like, yeah, Davante Adams still our starting receiver. Like he's clearly still the starter, and that made him worth a shot, right? If we were playing best, we could go back and play best ball. He would be worth mixing in the 18th round, right? And Tyler Boyd, was in a similar situation in 2018 after 2 bad years, 1.25 yards per route run as a rookie, 1.09 as a sophomore. He jumped to 2.06 yards per route run in 2018, but he was pretty clearly a starter. I remember Sean Siegel hammering Tyler Boyd in the final rounds of the high stakes stuff. I didn't get there. I was like, this dude stinks. I'm out. But that is where, like, if JSN has a bad year and now we get him for free, I do think we would want to attack the prospect profile for free. This is kind of why I'm still in on the Bateman thing of like, I'm going to sprinkle Bateman in. Now, if he gets steamed up, I'd take him in the 13th round. Probably not. But like, I actually was totally down with going back on Rashad Bateman. I will make fetch happen. And we can get him if we can get him for free.
First person ever. Many have tried to climb this hill.
If we can get the guys for free and we're still betting on the prospect profile in year 3 or whatever, then I think it's fine. But you really do. The price needs to drive it.
No, I do too. And yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much summarizes it. There is no, just like the new stuff, just like all this different shit. There is never like, that's probably all. These are such fun conversations because this is like the epitome of this game. And everybody wants everything to be binary and wants to be like, tell me who's good and tell me who's bad. And it's like, Davante Adams is one of the best wide receivers of all time. And at no point during the first 3.5 years of his career could anybody definitively say that. And we all thought, we all thought very, very certain. And quite frankly, he was bad as a rookie and he was bad as a sophomore and he wasn't that good as a, et cetera, right? But then like, so many of these things can change. So many of these things are completely uncertain. And so then how do we apply it to this game? Hopefully a lot of the things that we talked about here, but price matters, right? What our opponents are doing matters. The fact that our opponents don't care about a lot of this, the fact that our opponents treat it, they also handle it differently, right? Our opponents will not be consistent in how they not just assess talent, but like our opponents may say, yeah, this guy is good, but I don't care. This guy is bad, but I don't care. Like it's very fluid in how all of that works. And it's our jobs to come in and with everything in this game, but very much so in the good versus bad players is like, okay, here's all the pros and here's all the cons. Hopefully there are some of both. Here are the pros and here are the cons, right? Prospect profile, right? What he did last year, his situation, what the coaches are telling us now, where there's like all these different things. And we come together and we put it, and then we say, okay, well, yeah, he's going in the 7th round. It's like, all that comes together and says, I don't like that. I don't like that price, for there. And then, like as you said,
you're paying a lot for the prospect profile to me in the 7th round. Not like a ton. It's not crazy.
Yeah. It's not crazy, but
it's a little more than I'd like.
Right. It's like what I mentioned with the Keon Coleman thing. It's like, could he be good? Does he serve a purpose? Whatever. Sure. Am I paying a lot for one of the worst wide receiver prospect profiles?
I'm taking him. I know it's expensive.
I'm not zeroing him, right? We've had some recent conversations in the Spike Week Discord about like, guys that you're like, no, he's not in the queue, right? He's not like, I scroll past him. I don't see him on the list when I'm drafting a team. And there are some of those guys. Keon Coleman is not that for me. These guys can serve a purpose, right? There's going to be teams. I'm on your side of the JSN thing. I haven't taken it very much, like hardly at all. But there will be times when I get to that 7th or 8th round, and I'm like, oh no, I took XYZ players. I did take an elite quarterback and an elite tight end, and I'm getting locked out a wide receiver. Yep. I need that home run swing. I know it's unlikely based on XYZ. I think he leans more towards the mediocre to bad level of player. But I'm also willing to accept the fact that Keon Coleman and Jaxon Smith-Njigba do have this ceiling in their profile. I just think it's less likely than their cost. But that a team might need, just like, look, it's probably not going to happen, but the team needs it, right? The team needs it.
Team needs it. Yeah.
I just need the swing, right? Because DeAndre Hopkins is not providing that to me, right? Calvin Ridley are not providing that to me. But I mean, like, like a talent, like he's older. It's like DeAndre Hopkins is not going to become Devontae Adams. I don't think Jaxon Smith-Njigba is either, but the level of uncertainty in the prospect profile provides.
That's true. Yeah. You need the big, and to me, I tend to like it more with the rookies. Like I'm like,
yeah,
I really value the uncertainty that the rookies provide. Like we just truly don't know. I mean, Quentin Johnston sucks, right? Sorry, Quentin, but
yes,
it wasn't good. And Tank
round
Dell's
pick,
awesome. Puka's awesome.
Yeah.
We just didn't know that. We did not know. Like, think about how much we didn't know about who was good in the rookie class last year. We were so wrong. We suck. Quentin sucks and we suck too.
Correct.
We can't figure this shit out. And then it blows our minds, but give ourselves, when you draft a rookie, like I'm giving myself a chance for my mind to be blown by Keon Coleman. And I'm especially doing it when I have Josh Allen and maybe Dalton Kincaid or James Cook. And you know what? If you blow my mind, it would really help this roster.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. When he blows your mind, I want my team to be set up in a way where, like, okay, yeah, we're winning a whole shit ton of money.
We're winning it all. Yeah.
Not just like you random Keon spread across random ass teams. You know what? The other funny thing about the good versus specific rookies, good versus bad, is, and I'm not even saying, I don't even like have an answer to what, like how to change this, but we're willing to be wrong when we can project volume onto the guy so easily, right? I think about Mingo. It's like, I'm not sure I met a person or talked to a person last summer that was like, fuck yeah, dude, Jonathan Mingo is going to be awesome. He is an incredible, he has an incredible profile, right? No, it was his profile sucks, but he got some draft capital and the Panthers don't have anybody.
That was like my exact take, was like, his profile doesn't fully suck because he was athletic. Yeah. Draft capital is important.
Right. He wasn't he's not an undrafted wide receiver.
Pretty cheap for the draft capital.
Yes.
So let's,
but like we exactly. But we always do that with the, like, we say all these same things. The NFL loved him, right? I didn't love his profile, but the NFL told us he's a second. It's like, well, one team told you. It's like, what? That's what my thing is like, and I say this shit too, right? The NFL said. It's like, well, the Carolina Panthers said, and why the fuck are we trusting the Carolina Panthers?
Said, yeah,
exactly. You know what I mean? They also traded the farm for Bryce Young when they.
He's also like downtown Charlotte ripping hats off dudes.
Yeah. Like this team just literally buried their whole franchise to trade for a 5'6" quarterback when they could have just taken CJ Stroud. It's like, and that's the team. Like, they told us, and that's what we. Again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I am saying, like, to your rookie thing, we don't know shit. The NFL, and like, we want to say the NFL knows, but the NFL, if the NFL knew, Tank Dell wouldn't have fallen, and Puka Nacua wouldn't have fallen, and like, Kyron Williams wouldn't have fallen, and like, it's just, we just don't really know that much, and nobody knows. And so with that,
we do know a lot more once we get the first season. No, we don't know everything, but it's like, I really do value that. Like,
I agree.
What could this be? Could be anything, like, and I know that's like the meme, but like,
great meme.
You could really hit on something huge with one of these rookies. And if you set up the team to benefit from that, correlate it and everything. Now, you don't want to, and maybe we are reaching this point soon of where the prices are just absolutely out of control. We've sucked all the upside out of it, but I don't think we have yet. And I think you can pick your spots. And even if a guy is overpriced, like Keon Coleman probably is, you can still, win because you're getting Josh Allen and you've got him correlated, and the other thing is you can stack up Josh Allen with Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman pretty easily. And it's like, if Khalil Shakir is a 6th round value and Keon Coleman is a 12th round value, but he hits at the end of the season, like, you'll be okay. It doesn't, the setup is such that we can probably still get away with it. But yeah, I mean, at a certain point we would reach a a price point where these rookies, we are paying too much for that unknown. But I think the unknown, I mean, I don't think we're there yet. Xavier Legette was a first-round pick. He's free. Ricky Pearsall has no projected touches, so he's in like the 12th round or whatever. Like Jalen Polk is on the Patriots, and the Patriots are going to be bad forever because they were bad last year, and so he's available in the 13th round. Like
Luke McCaffrey.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways to play this.
I think that is my rookie takeaway is that, yes, these guys are getting more expensive. I mean, Marvin Harrison goes, 12th overall, and Malik Neighbors goes in the 3rd round. The rookies are getting more expensive. It's similar to the wide receiver pricing, that you've talked. Like, I just think this is more efficient. The rookies should be a lot more expensive. And so there are going to be ones, if rookies have gotten more expensive, there are going to be some that are absolutely overpriced. Right. My personal bet is on Keon being that guy. It could be Brian Thomas. It could be Ladd. It could be, I don't know. It could be one of many different guys. But again, the market decides we're going to price up these 4 guys and you can have the rest for free. Right. Ricky Pearsall free. And like, I understand it. Look, I don't like Ricky Pearsall either, but like Ricky Pearsall free, Luke McCaffrey free, right? Jalen Polk free, Javon Baker free, et cetera, et cetera. Xavier Legette free, even though Jonathan Mingo wasn't free last year. It's like, we pick and choose the rookies. So as a collective, the pricing is still too cheap to beat. It's just there will be a handful that we decide, no, these are the guys, and some of those will be too expensive. But collectively, none of the running backs are. Jonathan Brooks is the first running back, and he's 90 on Underdog at like 110 on DraftKings. Like, I don't think we've gotten too crazy with the quarterbacks are fine. Maybe Ben Sinnott.
Ben Sinnott. Yeah, we've lost our mind on Ben Sinnott a little. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, we should probably cool off by about 10 picks on Ben Sinnott. Yeah, otherwise we're fine.
Poor Ben Sinnott. If Sam Laporta didn't happen, we would be getting a fine price on Ben Sinnott. But the articles of who's this year's Kyron, who's this year's Puka. Poor Ben Sinnott's in every one of the who's this year's Sam Laporta's. So he's getting steamed up. We should eventually hit a third question.
Oh my God, we're still 2 questions in.
That you wanted to. We've answered like 500 questions in 2 questions, though. To be fair.
Let's see. Here's one about Justin Fields. Did we talk? We didn't talk about this last time, did we?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So first of all, are you taking Justin Fields? And if so, what types of teams are you using him on?
Yeah, I definitely am taking Justin Fields. I have quite a bit of Justin Fields. I view him as actually a really, really fun best ball pick specifically. Obviously, I wouldn't draft him in managed leagues or whatever. But we talk about, we have talked about training camp news and all that kind of stuff. And how, I just don't really think it matters for the Steelers. I think the Steelers are a football team who is going to try to win, and they're continually successful. And if Justin Fields
if you're standing in the way of the Steelers getting the 7th seed, you're
it doesn't matter who you
run
are.
Over.
Nope.
You're getting run the fuck over. They're getting that 7th seed.
They drafted hometown Kenny Pickett in the 1st round, and they did not care about him. And now his NFL career is essentially over. They played Mason Rudolph over him. Mitch Trubisky. They don't care. They're going to try to win games, and they do have a good roster. I mean, I understand they are going to probably get the 6th or 7th seed again this year and lose in the playoffs. But yeah, because that's what they do. But they're a successful team who cares about winning, as most of these teams do, and so. If I don't think Russell Wilson is very good, that I don't really see why, and I'm willing to draft rookies, the Drake Mays of the world. I don't really view Justin Fields that different, other than the fact that I know if he steps foot on the field, he's going to be a fantasy star. It is what it is. I don't know how good he is as a real life football player, but I know for fantasy, he's going to score a whole shit ton of fantasy points if he is out there on the field. I also know that at his price, I mean, if I can't survive a few weeks without my last round pick at quarterback, I don't really think that I'm drafting very well. I'm probably just drafting really bad teams. If he goes in the borderline last round on DraftKings, I know it's a little higher on Underdog, right? Let's call it 15th or 16th. If my team can't survive without, a certain period of time with 15th, 16th round quarterbacks, then my teams probably just aren't very good in general. And like the amount of points that a late round quarterback provide to a team are often really not very much at all. So I will say I am going to build him with elite quarterbacks. I don't really want to draft 2 quarterback teams that are like Tua and Justin Fields.
No,
I don't think I have enough cloud cover. I don't think I have enough cover to navigate, because what I want to do with a player like Justin Fields is not just like total swing for the fences and pray it works out. I want to build him into where like this dude can take my team over the top. And I like, if I don't get him, if I don't get anything from Justin Fields, like it's not over. Like I don't want the team to be over and dead and buried just because I drafted Justin Fields and he didn't play this year, right? So how do I do that? Like I draft him with Lamar Jackson. I draft him with Josh Allen. Like, look, if I lose out on the 12 points I would have got from whatever Derek Carr during their bye week, like the season's not over. You know, I've mentioned a bunch of times. My team that did really, my best team last year that did really well was Lamar Jackson and Kenny Pickett. You know how many points Kenny Pickett get added to that team? A fucking total 0. Like he did nothing for me at quarterback.
I think Liam's team that won also had a 0 from Justin Fields.
Yeah, he had Josh Allen,
it was
right?
Allen Fields. Yeah.
Allen Fields, and Justin Fields himself provided 0. I don't want that. That's not why I'm drafting him, but I want to provide that cover to where like, look, I don't want him to sink this team that could be good. Basically is what I'm saying. But I also want him to like add a level of upside, right? If you could tell me I could draft Josh Allen in the 3rd round and a potential like 5th round value at quarterback in the 16th and pair them together. And the only thing is like, you might just get 0s from that 16th round all year. That's risk I'm willing to accept for the upside case that comes with it. But I want to put it onto smart teams. I don't even love it so much. Like people might say we can punt off quarterback and have him as one of your 3 late guys or whatever. I don't hate it. But that's a lot less cover than you think that it is, right? Like Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford, and Justin Fields is like,
you probably want like Bo Nix or something.
Yeah, right. Like
someone who's going to start.
Fully embrace the punt, like Bo Nix, Drake May, Justin Fields, and say I am willing to burn this baby, but I'm spending.
I think you just did burn that baby. Yeah, baby, consider that baby burned.
But I would like at least like think about it a little bit, where I'm like, I spent so little draft capital on.
Yeah,
like,
fair enough. You spent
that. Like again, I'm not saying I like that. I really like it with like, honestly, Richardson.
Because I like Drake May, but he's probably not starting right away either. So it's like Bo Nix week 1.
But there's so much uncertainty at this point in offseason. Yeah, exactly. Like the whole if Justin Fields just outplays Russell Wilson in camp, the Steelers are not just going to say, yeah, Russ, I understand their guess and their bet right now is Russell Wilson is starting week 1 and is their quarterback and he's going to be good. But like, that's not it's not 0% and 100%, right? And they're going to do the thing that's best for them.
I think my thing on that is I think they said some stuff to Russ and they said some stuff to each other about Russ. And they said, you know what? We're basically going to take this free crack on Russ, but it's a good move for us. And we think this is going to work for us and we're committed to it. And then the league decided that it was totally fine to prioritize Gardner Minshew ahead of Justin Fields. And that's not really fucking stupid. That's what the league decided. And the Steelers were like, what? I guess for free, we will take Justin Fields too. And then they are like, but this doesn't change all the stuff we said. That stuff was not lies. It was real. We meant it. And we're going to continue with our plan as if Justin Fields didn't arrive completely for free onto this roster. And that, in my mind, is not going to survive contact with reality. I don't know when things will shift. It might be late in the season. It might never happen because Fields might disappoint. But I think from a talent perspective at this point in their careers, it's pretty hard for me to imagine that Fields isn't going to be better than Russell Wilson. Obviously, that's not 100% guaranteed, but that's a bet I'm comfortable making. And in fact, it's a bet I have made. I made Leone and I did a side bet week 14 who's starting, Justin Fields or Russell Wilson.
Oh, I would take the Field side of that. Yeah, for sure. I just think, like, strictly from a best ball perspective, the market's getting smarter. These elite quarterbacks are expensive. It's hard to find late court. Right? Why did I go so hard on Sam Howell? It wasn't because I disagree with absolutely anything you said about the risk and the bench and all that kind of stuff. Is that I thought that the profile, dare I say, the profile was like of a upside.
What's coming from inside the house on the profile? Eric.
Yes, 100%, 100%. I need to get not Skip Bayless. There's the guy that was on one of the ESPN shows. He always used to have the chalkboard behind him, and he would write stupid ass. Was it?
Oh, this is on Pardon the Interruption.
Tony Reale. No, well, Tony Reale came from Pardon the Interruption. What's the one around? No,
around the horn.
Around the horn.
Yeah.
I forget what the guy. He's from Denver, I think it was. He always used to. I need to put like something about profile on there because I definitely do say
I forget that guy's name. I know exactly. I can picture him. Yeah.
I hope he's still alive because he was getting kind of old. Shout out Bill Walton, by the way.
Dark turn for this
amazing, really dark, really dark turn. That's what happens when you say profile too much. Bad things. Don't say profile 3 times in a row, right? Like something bad will happen.
Don't, especially not in the mirror.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm looking at my face right now, my own one. But
Woody Page.
Woody Page. That's it. Yeah.
And it looks like he's alive.
Good for go Woody. Good job. See, all right. See, this is looking up. This podcast is on the way back up. I just think that Justin Fields, like when we look back, and we're like, what things could have just like won you an absolute shit ton of money? And it was like, yeah, this guy who we were drafting in the 5th round for multiple years on the fucking Bears, is playing on a competent offense with the Steelers and is a fantasy superstar every time he is out there on the field, right? If you play DFS, there's tons of weeks where people will be like, yeah, all these other games, I want to stack them, but I'm going to play Justin Fields at quarterback, with or without DJ Moore, with or without Cole Kmet. I'm just going to play Justin Fields, get his 30, and then I can play, the Rams guys because then I don't have to play Stafford. I can play the Saints guys because I don't have to play. Right. And it's like we get that asset in the, end of drafts, and we were worried about late stage career Russell Wilson when his former teams all just like didn't want him anymore. And it's of course very possible that Justin Fields does nothing this year. It's absolutely possible. But if we look back and Justin Fields does do stuff, like how foolish it will look in hindsight. And sometimes it is that simple. Just like, oh, we had Justin Fields in the 18th round and you didn't fucking draft him because you were worried about Russell Wilson. Like, dude, and you can take him with Josh Allen. You can take him with Lamar Jackson. You can take him with Anthony Rich. You can take him with whoever. And like you have cloud cover for the times when it's not, when he's not scoring points. Like, I just feel like it's an opportunity. We'll look back, like, we joke about like generational wealth opportunities. It's like, but this really like genuinely could be one. And we're going to be so stubborn because like he might not start at the beginning of the season. That seems really like a silly way to play this game.
Yeah, it does to me too. And I tend to be a little bit more concerned about, the guys not playing in general. But I think, it actually made me reconsider Pickens. I was like, Pickens in the rankings, you weren't getting any Pickens. And, we were talking with Leone on chip chasing, and he's like, I don't get this Pickens price. And I don't really get the Pickens price. But I was like, man, if I'm at the 4 or 5 turn and I need a receiver and I'm not even considering Pickens, then what's going to happen is I'm never really going to be considering Fields either. And I'm taking a ton of the Drake May backdoor stack. I'm getting a ton of it, and I love it, but I don't need quite as much as I'm getting. And I'm getting plenty of the Bo Nix stuff. I'm not always tacking on Bo Nix, and sometimes I play it through Burrow, and I just kind of do like a double or a triple bring back and basically use that as a stack without the quarterback. So I don't have as much Bo Nix, but I'm not having any trouble clicking the Broncos. Mm-hmm. But I am having trouble clicking the Steelers on the way to Fields. Pickens definitely feels a little overpriced to me. Freiermuth, I'm not that into. Yep. They're talking about using the tight ends more, including
Darnell. There's already a Darnell's going to catch more passes. Blurb out there to our news.
I mean, Darnell Washington is the most Arthur Smith player I've ever seen. You imagine Arthur Smith.
He's like the Undertaker on the football field. He's fucking ginormous.
He's ginormous. I cannot truly. Arthur Smith. He's literally like they're gonna open up his playbook, and it's The Shining except it's all just screen passes to Darnell Washington. That's all he's written.
The worst play in football is the tight end screen. You'll never convince me of anything else. It is never goddamn works ever. Arthur Smith's going to run 3 a game to Darnell Washington. It's a lock.
So I'm nervous about Freiermuth. Roman Wilson's fine. I take some Roman Wilson, but he's not a priority for me. And it's a thin group. So, I take a ton of Jalen Warren, as everyone knows, and I'm willing to take Harris, but that's not necessarily getting me on Fields, right?
No.
But I have the running back. So the 3 pass catchers are not really priorities, and so then I show up and I don't really have any feel and he's just not jumping off the page to me.
Yeah.
But I honestly was like, I need to raise Pickens. Like, I actually think I need to get Pickens up a little, not a ton. I still think he's a little overpriced, but is he undraftable? No. Partly because what's one of the things that we could look back on in May and say, oh my God, do you remember that this dude was going here? Mm-hmm. And I would say, if I had to pick, the 3 things would probably be Rashee Rice's price one way or another.
100%.
The Cowboys running backs.
Mm-hmm.
And probably third on my list would be Justin Fields,
mm-hmm.
right?
Either
could you imagine we drafted this guy, or did you imagine he's going in the 18th round? And I mean, if he's a guy, I want him stacked. So I'm like, I want a little bit more Pickens. I'm taking more Pickens with the idea that I can get that Justin Fields stack a little bit more. It's not like a massive priority for me, but it's something I want, and I needed to set myself up for a little bit more and be a little bit more thoughtful, I thought, about kind of how these drafts are going. And these are a lot of slow drafts too. So I'm kind of like, I'm seeing myself kind of get to the end and I don't really have any interest. So
yeah.
But the other interesting thing about the builds that you're talking about, and this is kind of just a funny quirk of the landscape this year. Ravens week 14 bye. Stroud, I don't know if you count him as a true elite, but week 14 bye.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Richardson week 14 bye. Josh Allen week 12 bye. So you're getting, I mean, if you want to do the elite quarterback thing, you also have the Cardinals with the week 11 bye. These are late bye weeks for some of the most obvious guys to pair with Justin Fields, which it's pretty interesting. The Steelers, by the way, week 9 bye. 8 weeks of Russell Wilson feels like enough. That feels like enough.
Yes, the Broncos probably felt like that it was enough last year as well. No, I totally agree. I think Pickens. So I always struggle with when people say I don't get X receivers ADP because even I don't like Keon, right? But I do sort of understand why he goes where he goes, and it's also ADP is also not for Pickens, but it's not always about that player. Right. I think Christian Watson's ADP is kind of fake. It's not really about his, we talked about, the whole screen is running backs. When you get to his range, it's we got to put a wide receiver eventually somewhere. So sometimes it's about that, but also with Keon, I think it's people are taking Josh Allen, and then the next thing you do when you take Josh Allen is you're okay, who am I stacking with him? It's I'm not taking Curtis Samuel or Khalil Shakir over him, so naturally he has to go higher, right? So there's nuance to that,
and he's on that side. They're I'm gonna reach for him in the 6th because he won't come back in the 7th, and then that pushes ADP up. But
right, the market is not. It's not the ADP is not just a here's who I think should go right at each cost. There's levels to that as well. But I do understand why people push back, would say the George Pickens thing. My struggle for me, with the rankings, obviously I'm even more wide receiver heavy than anybody else in the whole space. So when you're 25 picks behind ADP on all of these running backs, the wide receivers can't be behind ADP, right? So I can't be behind on George Pickens and all of that. But I also just generally think for best ball, especially, I'm not drafting George Pickens in a managed league because I don't want to deal with that mess. I don't want to deal with start sit. I don't want to deal with the 2-point Drake London games of last year. But Drake London had 30-point games. Drake London had big games, and George Pickens to me. I'm not saying he's Drake London as a real life football player or whatever, but from an archetype perspective, best ball only to me is small miss, big win. If we look back and George Pickens is a superstar and Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are good enough that they can just get him the ball, like I don't really care that much about the Arthur Smith things. If George Pickens is awesome, I already know he's like a better and best ball archetype. I've seen it. I saw it with Mason Rudolph. I saw it with Kenny. I saw it with Mitch. That's his archetype. If he's actually awesome, and Roman Wilson and Darnell Washington are the target competition, I get it, right? Scotty Miller, LOL, Van Jefferson, LOL. Like that's going to be a mess. They're going to run too much. I get it, but like that still can have value in this game specifically. I just never want to have to worry about I don't want to pick when it happens. Like I'm not playing that fucker in DFS unless he's 1% owned, right? Like I'm not picking when it happens, but I do think that in best ball that there's plenty of value, as a 4th round pick. Like, so you like Christian Kirk or Terry McLaurin better than him. I think that's fine. That doesn't mean I want 0 of the guy.
That's how I kind of got to. I was getting 0. I was getting like 0. And I was just like, this is dumb. Because it's not just that he, could be a lot better than we're paying for, but it's also that if I'm interested in Fields and Fields is most likely to start at the end of the year, and does that unlock some deep threat stuff for Pickens? I think it probably does.
Mm-hmm.
The explosive, like we saw, like Fields is so bad, right? Like Chicago, but didn't he also facilitate like a 50-point game for DJ Moore? Didn't that happen? Like he kind of is not that bad, to be honest.
Cole Kmet got paid.
Kind of awesome.
Cole Kmet doesn't think Justin Fields is terrible. He just, speaking of generational wealth, Cole Kmet got some generational wealth because of Justin Fields. And DJ Moore went from a guy that people thought was undraftable in fantasy to a 2nd round pick because of Justin Fields.
I said in our rankings chat, I was like, we don't play in points per didn't see the safety leagues. We don't have to worry about Justin Fields not reading defenses. It doesn't matter. Like it just doesn't. That. I mean, it matters if he gets benched. It matters if he doesn't see the field, right? So it matters to some extent. And obviously interceptions and drives, and they're not good. But like, I just was, man, I don't want to hammer Pickens now. I don't want to overreact to this new thought that I have. But it's like, I did decide like it's okay for me to be underweight Pickens. I don't want to be completely fading Pickens. I am completely fading some guy like Michael Pittman. I'm just like fully fading. This is like the projectable touches running back of wide receivers. And I'm just comfortable being like, nope, not interested. I think you literally by the end of the season might be the 3rd most talented receiver on your team. That we might think that. Now
I'm taking a smidge on DraftKings.
Okay. That makes more sense to me because it's a PPR play.
And I also run into, I want more Anthony Richardson. I don't like AD Mitchell either. Speaking of prospect profiles that we don't like. Damn it.
I'm taking AD Mitchell, man.
I'm taking AD Mitchell. I got to think of a different word. Prospect resumes that I don't like. No. I don't really like AD Mitchell, but I'm not avoiding him either, right? I'm not saying I don't, but I don't want to like.
He's a good pick. I think AD Mitchell is a good pick.
I think he's fine. I think he's totally fine.
I sort of came around. I thought he'd fall more. Like last week, I was like, he needs to fall more, but I've taken enough Richardson to where when Mitchell comes around, so I'm not taking Mitchell a ton alone, but when I have Anthony Richardson and Mitchell's there, I'm like, dude, the late season upside that this correlation provides is so underpriced. Like it is, once you have Richardson, he feels like a smash. When you don't have Richardson,
agreed.
I'm not that into it.
And that's the big thing is I want Richardson. I don't want all of my Richardson to own. Like if I think Richardson can be that late season smash, I don't want to show up to the finals and Michael Pittman has a 30% target share. And all I have is the only teams I ever drafted with Richardson are Josh Downs or AD Mitchell or both or whatever. I'm not going to be overweight Michael Pittman. I'm not. And I think And I think that's totally fine. But when you don't draft any running backs in any draft ever until the seventh or 8th round, I have a lot of player combinations I'm actually siphoning through that I maybe thought that I wouldn't, right? And so I found.
Where are you taking Pittman? Because I have taken him occasionally in the 4th.
Yeah, he falls on DraftKings.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I think in the 4th, like
0 on Underdog. I'm not
Yeah.
taking that fucker on underdog at the 2-3 turn. You must
Middle
be
of
out
the
of your
third.
goddamn mind. Yeah, that's crazy. It's
Wild
nonsense.
to me, man. And the only upside case I've heard is like they use him a lot on the RPO stuff, but like that's
Yeah, Ben said that yesterday on the show that we did yesterday, and I'm like, I love a good hand in the dirt football RPO take or whatever, but I'm not drafting a dude in the third round because of an RPO take.
because that could be anybody. That's the thing with the RPO thing is like that's literally anybody can be in that role. Like, and I assume it will be Pittman, but like, that's projected touches, man. You're projecting touches at wide receiver. Like, there's earning targets and then there's RPO stuff.
We just did this. We just did this with Allen Robinson. Speaking of the Bears, we did this with Allen Robinson a couple of years ago, right? With projectable volume for guys who haven't. And then Pittman, I think Pittman's better than what Allen Robinson was at that time. But we didn't know Allen Robinson.
I think he's a 6th round pick or maybe 5th. But he was guess what? He was a 5th round pick last year. We took him in the 7th, and now he's a 5th round pick, and we're taking him in the 2nd,
third.
Or third.
It's what's different from him from that the Pickens, Kirk, McLaurin, right? Like all those guys in that 4 or 5 turn range or whatever, depending upon the site that you're on. I think he's fine. I think he's totally fine right there. It's just that he goes next to.
I have him ranked in the pure ranks. I have him at 1 spot ahead of Pickens. That would be totally fine.
Yeah, I have no pushback.
I will not take him in the 3rd
on that. Let's hit a couple more because I have to run and do a stream. I didn't realize what time it was. We're drafting a BBM today. I like this one, Crossover King. What do you think about building? So he mentions like 3 like pass dependent quarterbacks, but just like pocket passers in general. That's something we talk a lot about, like at the value of rushing quarterbacks and all that kind of stuff. But like when you're building out your portfolio and doing your drafts, like how much do you end up landing on some of these pocket passers? And then how do you like to build a team, that has Matthew Stafford or has Aaron Rodgers or someone like that, Derek Carr?
Yeah, I'm not taking, and I wonder if I'll feel like this was overdone this year or not, but like I'm not scooping falling pocket passers this year and then trying to backdoor stack with them. And I'm seeing Burrow fall, and I'm seeing Dak fall. Now with Dak, I sometimes will go Ferguson Dak because they go right next to each other, and I'll just do it that way. Mm-hmm. But Tua will sometimes just fall. And I'm not really doing it. I'm not really taking these guys. I'm just like one example was I had a Trevor Lawrence mega stack set up in the Greyhound, right? This is the $35 single entry, smaller advance. And I literally stacked I got ETN, Kirk, Brian Thomas, Evan Ingram. So I
just did this without ETN, of course, because I don't draft running backs. And then I put Bigsby on there, and I had basically 5 Jags. Same thing with Lawrence. Exact same thing.
Yeah. So then I came back. And I saw this guy. I just had he was giving me weird vibes from the 1 hole, and I think I was out of the 2, I think, and or maybe I was out of the 3. But I was right around there, and I think I was out of 3 because I had Tyreek, and I just was like the 1 hole's taking a quarterback, and the Brock Purdy, he had 2 quarterbacks. I shouldn't have taken quarterback, but I was like, he's going to do it, and he had Brock Purdy was still available. So I had this decision because I had Ayuk. I'm just gonna pull up the board because I'm like going off memory trying to describe exactly what I did. So I went Tyreek, Debo, Achane, Kirk, ETN, Brian Thomas, Evan Ingram, Cortland Sutton, Javonte Williams. So now it's the 10th round. Brock Purdy's still available, and I have Debo. But I also have this mega stack set up, and I also have Tyreek with Achane and Tua is available. So I was like, the least valuable of these quarterbacks at this point to me is Brock Purdy.
Mm-hmm.
The most valuable is Trevor Lawrence. And I just kind of knew that the guy out of the 1 hole, who at this point had Anthony Richardson and then Jordan Love, I was like, the Love pick was weird. This guy's a wild card. I'm not trusting him to do anything. The other guy like stacked up Kyler Murray with Trey McBride. Like I was like, he seems like he's kind of, I can trust him to kind of build a team, but not the 1 hole. And I was like, now I can use this information one of 2 ways. He can either take Brock Purdy, which he probably will do if I leave him Brock Purdy, but But if I don't trust this guy, the way he hurts me most is he takes Trevor Lawrence.
Right.
Blows up this team. And I was just like, single entry. I've already made this giant bet on the Jags. I'm just taking Trevor Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
So I took Trevor Lawrence. Sure enough, he takes Purdy. It comes back to me, and I grab Tua. But Tua stacked with Tyreek and Achane. I gave up value there, right? Like, I gave up a chance to get Brock Purdy, Deebo Samuel, super underpriced. But I was, and again, this is like a single entry tournament where I just felt like I kind of wanted to just like make sure the team was live. And so I took the guy that was most valuable to me at that point, which is unquestionably Trevor Lawrence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ingram, Thomas, Etienne, Kirk. I need Trevor Lawrence on this team at that point more than I need Brock Purdy. And so, like, the falling value of the pocket passer doesn't mean that much to me. It's about what the value of the quarterback is to that team. And that, like, those pocket passer, the difference in ADP is like 97 versus 118. Like, oh my God, what a value. Like, who cares? Who cares? Like, that's not really that much difference, right? It's probably a couple bucks and an auction dollar, $3. If you
have the widest range, which we talked about.
Yes, they have the widest
range, right? In one auction, they go for $1. In another auction, they go for $5. But that doesn't mean that the average at 3 is the appropriate price. It's very dependent upon the draft.
Right. And if you were in an auction draft and it's like you had that stack and it's like, hey, you could either pay $15 for Brock Purdy or $15 for Trevor Lawrence, you'd be like, paying $15 for Trevor Lawrence.
Exactly.
What are we talking about?
You also said this last week, which is so true. The value of the players, this is all players, but quarterbacks the most. The value of that player changes based upon who you have selected onto that team. This is another perfect example of that, similar to the one you gave last week.
Yep.
I was going to add, so how I kind of think about pocket passers in general is, first, they're the least impactful and valuable archetype of a player in all of best ball. More so than we love dead zone running backs and projectable volume. And those guys are more, even I hate Rachaad White. I hate Josh Jacobs. I hate these guys. They're more valuable than the pocket passers. There are levels to the pocket passer thing. I draft some of them occasionally, but generally speaking, I frequently talk about, right, I want to be intentional about things. Even with someone as good of a pocket passer as Patrick Mahomes, I don't want to just like, all willy-nilly take those. Like, I don't want it to just be like, oh yeah, he fell 6 picks past ADP, let's do it. Or, I feel like taking Patrick Mahomes in this draft. I mean, I guess sometimes that probably happens because I want to experiment with something, but that was the intentional part. I wanted, let's take Mahomes and see what we can do with this Rashee Rice thing, right? It's probably more about Rashee Rice, or maybe, there's a Q tag on Xavier Worthy right now on DraftKings. So you know how that goes. Sometimes they fall a little bit. Let's take Mahomes and see what happens. See if I can get a cheap Worthy and Rashee Rice team with Mahomes. But I'm intentionally doing something with even the best pocket passers, maybe the best pocket passers of all time, with Patrick Mahomes, with CJ Stroud, we're all excited for. But it's like, you are not going to catch me back, like you said, catching the falling knife that is CJ Stroud if I don't have any of those other Texans. I'm not interested. You talk about changing the value of CJ Stroud. I don't have any of the big 3 wide receivers. Like, you can't even really talk me into the Mixon thing. You can't even really talk me into the Dalton Schultz thing. Like, maybe, right? We could.
I've done it with the Mixon once, and I don't think it's great.
And I don't like it, right? When I draft a team and I say, how does this team win? I'm like, all right, Stroud throws 3 touchdowns to Joe Mixon in week 17, or I didn't want Stroud in week 17, or I didn't want Mixon in week 17. It's like, I tell myself this story, and it's like that. Technically, could it happen? Yeah, but like, that's not a story that that's really interesting to me. So, like, I want to be intentional about even the really good pocket passers, and then I want to have been backed into taking the cheap, shitty pocket passers. Like force me, we talked about the Saints, right? Like, force me into taking a Derek Carr who falls past ADP because, you know what? I tried some things at quarterback. It didn't work. Whatever. Like, I was forced into it, but I have Lamar or something like that, right? On this, I use Lamar as the easy example because I draft a lot of Lamar. But like, I'm not setting out to ever draft Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, whatever, those guys. Quite frankly, Tua, like it has to fall to me. And then guess what? I took like I did your Tyreek and Achane thing. Let's figure out a way that this works for this team. But even on that team, you were like, well, there was another priority, right? There was another priority at quarterback. They have their fits on teams. If I made a big Dolphins bet, sure. But even then, I'm not like, I got to force Tua ahead of ADP or whatever, especially in an example like you just gave. I mean, if I drafted all the Dolphins, like literally all the Dolphins, maybe, but like I don't do that very frequently, so it's not something I stumble into. You need to back me into the corner to take these pocket passers, because I always, right, I have Drake May in my back pocket. If I want to take a pocket passer who, and quite frankly, Bo Nix was not a pocket passer in his college career, but we're kind of viewing him that way because of his last season at Oregon. Like I got options, right? I can backdoor Bo Nix. I can backdoor Drake May. I can take Justin Fields. Like I just want you to back me into the corner with the pocket passers, and I better have probably multiple of them, right? I better have Olave Shaheed or Olave Juwan Johnson, or all right, I better add A.T. Perry to this team, because if Derek Carr's blowing up, like the Saints are really throwing for a whole shit ton of yards and touchdowns. So I'm really, really focused on not just giving in to the pocket passers, because I know how hard it is for them to matter in best ball. It's so hard for them to matter. And so when I want that team to the overpriced rookies, right? To the like blow me away with what you did, Derek Carr and the Saints. And now I'm going to have that team that's all right. You did it, right? You had the 35-point game that no one thought was possible. Now what happens? I want my team to be built that way. I don't want it to just be like, oh, Derek Carr is 14 picks past ADP. I can take him with A.T. Perry. It's like, nah, like I'm not winning anything that way, generally speaking. So I want to build teams that would win when that happens.
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling. I'm not. And even Burrow falls to the 90s.
He's a pocket passer. He's a pocket passer.
And I've got, let's say I've got Keenan and Rome. And it's Burrow versus Caleb Williams. What I'll generally do is I'll probably push Burrow around the corner, around the turn, and use Burrow as cover on Caleb to try to get a better running back.
Yep.
And then if you come back, I'm taking Caleb. Not Burrow. I don't have any Burrow's pieces. You know how many Burrow chase stacks there are? If Burrow's the guy you need, like, and I show up with Burrow, Keenan, and Rome, like, what? I need Caleb. I already bet on Caleb, so just finish it off. Like, that's the way I'm viewing it now. I mean, if it was, I wouldn't take that I wouldn't take Carr just because I had Olave, like I would, there's a tier, obviously, of guys who I think are kind of able to leap Burrow once you got him double stacked. But I think Caleb's one of those guys for sure. The other thing I would note is, like, it is very, very fun. I've talked about this in the past, but it's very fun when you have Jalen Hurts or Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson's kind of the perfect guy. You just scoop the Chiefs. Just scoop up those Chiefs.
Totally agree.
Like you take Anthony Richardson, you take Xavier Worthy. Maybe you already took Worthy. Richardson comes back. You get Rice in the 7th. Maybe you had Kelsey. You just scoop the Chiefs. You don't need Mahomes. You got Anthony Richardson. He's doing great. High floor every week. Goes off. Now, it would be nice to have Anthony Richardson stacked. Oh, my God. There's Josh Downs just sitting there for free.
Yeah.
There's A.D. Mitchell. Just tack him on. You already got tight end covered because you got Kelsey, so you don't need to worry about the fact that we don't know if it's Jelani Woods or Mo Alley Cox or whoever. Kylan
Granson, Mallory.
Mallory.
Jesus Christ.
So I don't know what's going on at tight end, but I already have Kelsey, so I'm good. I love that one. That one to me is like, and then, who they play week 17? They play the Steelers. Maybe we do the Justin Fields move on this team as our quarterback too. So you got Richardson, Fields as a Fields bring back on your Chiefs stuff. He's just going nuts. He's just running his ass off, running for long touchdowns as the Chiefs just throw from ahead, just pile it on. Best game of the year. I'm going to draft this team right now. But like you can, and it doesn't have to be the Chiefs and the Colts, but like when you get one of those elite quarterbacks, especially if it's like a high floor guy, like, Richardson projects to be as long as he's healthy, Allen, Hurts, these guys, you're basically like rolling them out every single week. Just find another team and scoop all the pocket pass. Like the Texans pair well with these guys. Like you just don't need, like, you're drafting Stroud without drafting Stroud. You're drafting Mahomes without drafting Mahomes. And you can do this with Jaden Daniels too. You can say, I'm going to take Jaden Daniels and I'm going to have him with a bunch of Texans, bunch of Chiefs, right? Now I would be a little bit more concerned about doing it with like the Bills or the Eagles or one of these guys who, when they go off, like they're going to maybe
do it
nuclear
with them.
scores.
I don't really want to do it with them.
Right.
Like you said, if Keon and Curtis Samuel blow me away, or right, Dalton Kincaid, especially the Bills, where like there's not much, right? The cupboard's bare, the vacated targets and all that stuff is like, if Kincaid and Keon are blowing up and winning me Best Ball Mania, I don't really see how Josh Allen isn't like,
you want Allen
like destroying me. Like my soul is like, I'm like, oh, congrats. Justin Fields was great for this week. He scored 23, and Josh Allen has 45 because, because those two guys are blowing up. I don't really like to do it that way, but I
think Daniels can provide cover on some guys. So
yes, it's just Allen is just a different beast.
He is different.
He's just a little bit of a different beast. I don't want to do it that way. I love doing what you do. How I kind of think about it is I use like you used. We talk about manipulating opponents like in the draft, and you mentioned a good example last week about doing so, but using the market's just obsession with the quarterback correlation part of a stack against them. Using that again, you are going to draft the least valuable thing in fantasy because you can't fathom leaving the draft with multiple Chiefs and not Patrick Mahomes. And I'm going to say, like, I'm going to use that against you, dude. Like, so like the Fields, I was going to add, why Fields is so powerful in all of this? Because I can use, again, like I can get all the Rams and I can get all the Saints, or I can get all the Chiefs, or I can get all the Chargers, or whatever team, right? Bengals. I can build all of that and build better versions of it than you can, because you're unwilling to avoid this pocket passing quarterback. And I can replicate his score even if his guys are going off. I can't replicate Josh Allen's score if his guys are going off, but I can replicate Derek Carr's score easily with multiple different runners and get the benefits of that Derek Carr thing and beat you. Beat you because you were unwilling to understand like just how like low value there is in the pocket passing quarterback.
The other thing is that, like, from what I understand, like, Shady Advice was talking about what the value of the bring back is and kind of like where it shows up mathematically. And it really it's an opposing pass catcher with opposing quarterback is really where so you're bringing along. So like Fields is kind of the perfect guy for this, because it's like the Chiefs are throwing a ton and scoring, or Fields is just actually, facilitating an exciting offense, and it kind of speeds up the game, and the Chiefs are throwing. But the nice thing is the Chiefs kind of throw no matter what, as long as they're like, if fairly expensive bets on Kelsey, Worthy, and Rice were worth it, then they're back to the old Chiefs ways. They're throwing a bunch. They're going to throw on anybody. And, that maybe Fields is having to speed up and throw a little bit more.
And run and scramble.
Yeah. And take some chances, get some deep balls to Roman Wilson. Maybe dump off to Jalen Warren for 3 or 4 touchdowns. That seems cool.
Just 3, 4.
Just 3, 4. Just 4 at the most.
Just 3. I will tell you, if Rashee Rice, Roman Wilson, Justin Fields is the nuts in week 17, and I won't get there because that's how this will work. I won't get the Fields, Roman Wilson, Rashee Rice.
Don't pull up the rosters and calculate the points.
Yeah, I'm not going to go look, but I will have a bunch of those, and it'll be a fun season. But we got to get out of here. We answered about 2.5 questions in 2.5 hours on this mailbag, but honestly, I thought it was a ton of fun conversation. And hopefully it's our typically efficient work that we usually do. I got to get out of here because I got to go draft a BBM team for these good, fine folks. But anything we haven't talked about that? Anything specifically new or what you got working on over at Legendary Upside?
I'll have an article out early next week on the running backs. I'm going to just kind of going through just like a market landscape piece, looking at the early round running backs, because, a lot's been made, as you would expect, by these wide receiver prices and the running back values that they provide. But I'm just kind of looking at like how big of a value are the values. Some are pretty big. Some are like not that big, compared to historical like where we typically tend to find these profiles. So it's kind of interesting. It actually made me a little less bullish on Jahmyr Gibbs, weirdly.
Interesting.
So I was like, it was like one of those things, like, I don't know who I'm supposed to take over Gibbs. Like, I'm not going to take like Marvin Harrison and Drake London, who I kind of feel like should be in the mid to late second round anyway. So, but it did make me feel like, I don't. I mean, his rookies, I think we're being a little optimistic to have him there. Unfortunately, there's no one else that we can take there. But yeah, there's been some. It was fun to dig in because it wasn't always like what I expected to find. So that should be out. I'm hoping to get that out Monday or Tuesday.
It's so funny you say that because yesterday recorded. It's live on the Spike Week YouTube and podcast feed with one of your co-hosts Ben Gretsch, John Daigle, now of Establish the Run, and Rich Rebar from Sharp Football, and we did a 3-round draft, but of the players we hate the most, of the players we thought are the worst picks, right? So we each took 3 players that we think are the worst picks in fantasy. Rich misunderstood the assignment. He thought we needed to take a round 1 player, a round 2 player, and a round 3 player. But he had the 101 in this shit player draft, and he took Jahmyr Gibbs.
Really?
Actually.
Maybe I just gotta go listen.
Very similar. Yeah, he made a it's within the first few minutes, so it'd be a quick listen if you just want to hear that. He made a very similar case to what you did, and Ben also made the similar exact same points where he's like, yeah, I think Gibbs is probably overpriced, but he's really good, and we have to take the RB4 at some point. He's like, what are you gonna do? What are we gonna do? You can't just not take any running backs until round 6. So we got to take some of these guys, and Jahmyr Gibbs is really good and on a really good offense. So we're just taking him, but he doesn't fit where he's going. It was a really interesting conversation.
I just really hope Garrett Wilson falls is my actionable takeaway. Just pray for
just
Garrett
don't
Wilson.
Make me take. Yeah, just please don't make me take him. But I think I have to. Yeah, but don't make me take him. I'm also becoming sort of obsessed with the eliminator format on Underdog. I'm pretty certain I'm maxing that baby, and I just put out my first strategy piece on the eliminator, and the more and more I've dug into it, I think, and this is a little hyperbole, but I think everybody's wrong about how they're thinking about the eliminator, because it sounds just like I just gotta not suck throughout the whole, right? It seems survive, people think Survivor and stuff is really easy, and I think we're all wrong. And my first take was kind of that too. I think everybody is thinking about eliminator wrong. I called it the most misunderstood format in best ball. So I put that out, and I'm going to have a continued series on eliminator because I'm going to be drafting a shit ton of that. And I think it's a really, really fun format. So go check that out. And we're going to be putting out stuff on Underdog is not giving us any breaks here early in the season with new formats launching every.
They're hitting us with the marathon and the sprint, which almost seems like a taunt.
It is.
They're you're getting hit with very different types of running. There's a marathon and a sprint on the same day. What the hell?
Yeah. What's next? Yeah. What's next? The 40-yard dash. I guess that is the sprint.
That is the sprint.
There's going to be a swim. Yeah. The 100-meter breaststroke is what's up next on Underdog, probably. But we got to get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your weekend if you're listening to this after it launches, and we will see you guys next week. Peace.
Woo! Those were some spicy takes. Want to stay up to date with all of the other spicy takes we're going to have over here at Spike Week? Why don't you press that subscribe button below? You turn notifications on, we draft a team, boom, you know about it. We have another spicy take, boom, you know about it. You can be there, you can draft with us. You want to stay up to date? That's how you do it. All right, we'll catch you later next time here at Spike Week.